Have you seen my staff? I have misplaced it, and I heard Jared might know of its whereabouts.
Bob Iger.
He's gone.
Gone?
For good.
And now,
Josh tomorrow.
CEO.
The new CEO.
Josh tomorrow?
Yes.
It's real.
He's in charge.
Everything changes.
Step through the portal. The new LEGO Epic Universe set brings the park's dramatic entrance to life in miniature, complete with a glowing celestial gateway, sleek coaster track, sparkling fountain.
Good evening. A downtown crash involving a touring mime troupe has left several performers injured and investigators searching for answers. Police say the mimes aren't giving any. Officers tell us the troupe...
This Universal Studios Florida, where you don't just watch the movies, you ride them. Hold on tight for high-speed thrills, plunge into blockbuster adventures, and take center stage in heart-pounding action.
Universal Studios.
Meet Churrobot, the little helper designed to fetch fresh, warm churros while you enjoy the rides. With its friendly eyes and heated delivery compartment, it rolls up to the stand, picks up your order, and brings it right back to you. One more.
Hopefully everyone is ready for a great live stream that's almost as great as my paintings. We'll just make a few more happy little clouds together.
Yo! Move! Back up! Oh my God! It's hitting the monorail!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I did get a new intro done. I didn't totally just get it done like 5 minutes before we went live. I totally had this totally prepared. I am on the ball on all aspects of life. And if you can't hear my sarcasm, then you'll figure it out eventually. But welcome to the show. Happy to be here tonight. We got some fun topics and a great panel. We actually have a special guest on today, and we're going to introduce everybody here. So before we get going, Mr. Orange Grove 55, thank you for being here. And where can everybody find you on the lovely interwebs?
Yeah, no, it's awesome talking shop with you, fine gentlemen. Vash Sky, first time on Theme Parkin. It's gonna be a really good time. But yeah, you can find me right here on YouTube, Orange Grove 55, talking theme park studio. We do the earnings calls. We do all kinds of stuff. I mean, we even talked about Egyptian pyramids with Jared and Slimer not too long ago. So we cover everything. But again, Orange Grove 55 here on YouTube and also on Instagram and on X.
Yes, sir. By the way, I've been watching a lot of Y-Files, and anytime you want to do another ancient civilization one, I'm in, because I've been watching it before I go to bed at night, and now like I think subconsciously all this stuff is getting in my head, and I'm just like, did we go to the moon? I don't know if we did. You heard the theory the moon is hollow and it rings like a bell?
I have. I've heard the moon was also not even real. It's like artificially made. It was brought here. Like,
yeah. Then there's like supposedly like stuff on the backside. It's all listen. I don't know if I believe it. It's all really interesting though. But speaking of interesting, we have Mr. Theme Park Philosophy here. Mr. Theme Park Philosophy, thank you for being here. Where can everybody find you? And did you say you put out a video, or you're going to put out a new video?
I just dropped a video about 15 minutes ago. Yeah, sometime between playing with the dogs and doing the dishes, I was able to hit send and uploaded it right to the channel. And you can actually check it out now or after this live theme park, and check it out afterwards. But it's on Disney's Civic Ritual of American Power. We're going to explore how Disney transforms political authority into ceremonial experience through technology and storytelling. And so if you're into that, go check that out. I got a couple other videos on there for you to check out. But thanks for having me on once again. I'm looking forward to this one. Vash is our first time theme parking guest here. So really looking forward to having this not this one-on-one, but this 3-on-1 on Vash's take.
Battle Royale, if you will. Every man for himself.
It's a battle royale of ideas.
Okay. I would say, I was like, I don't know, is that legal? No. Yes, I am here.
It depends on the state. It might be.
That's true.
It's legal in Florida. That's all I know. Maybe not anywhere else, but
there you go.
Yes,
okay.
we are joined by Mr. Vash Sky. Thank you for being here, first time on the channel. And where can everyone find you? And you have a new channel as well.
Yes, I do. So after many years on Orange Grove 55 and that Park Place and WW Pro and so forth, I have launched a new channel, as Jared pointed out astutely right there. My channel called Vash Sky Park Cast. Very, very cool stuff. We just had our first live stream today, actually, and a lot of people seem to really, really enjoy it. That was awesome. OG. was there. He was kind enough to join us, and that was really, really cool. But we also had, favorites in the community like Culture Casino, Follow the Bradley's Fun, Ron, Erica from Erica and Raph, and so many more. It was really, really cool. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, you can. I'm also in development of a video going through the history of Josh D'Amaro. Very interesting stuff about this guy that you find when you dig in deep enough. Like, for example, do you know that he was a basketball player in high school? And actually, the kids around him used to call him Chief. Very interesting, because now the Disney, 170,000 people within the experiences division and beyond are going to be calling him Chief, as in Chief Operating Officer, very, very soon. So very cool.
He kind of strikes me as a basketball player. Now that I kind of think about it, I could see that.
Yes, a little bit, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
A little
All
bit.
right. Well, and we will feel free if you want to in the chat, plug your channel. I'll put it in the description on my end as well. So be sure to go check out Vash's channel, as well as all these fine gentlemen here. And before we get going, we'll say hey to the chat real quick. We got Kiki and Luca in the house. Like, what is up, Kiki and Luca? We got The Real Venture, Storybook Sorceress. We've got Sean Norani. I think I got that correct. I always get that wrong. Pandora 576. We've got Cliff Flicks. What's up, Cliff Flicks? He said
Good
the
guy.
philosophy. Saw the Hall of Presidents video. Super cool. There you go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cliff's a good dude over there. Got Real Ventures. We got Dan's. Okay, how do I say this one? Dan's Life at the Kingdom. There we go. It was small for me. I couldn't see it. And we got Jonathan Cordova, and we have Sanchez R7G. We have them in the house. All right. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight. One of the main ones being, and I think this is a very curious thing, and talking beforehand, Vash and I may have different things about this, which I find interesting. I like discussions, and I like when I'm proven wrong many times. But there is a rumor out there that Villains Land, at least the initial plans, have been scrapped, as Imagineers have supposedly been told to dream bigger. Now, this comes from really where all this set off was Len Testa. If you don't know who he is, he runs touring plans. He's been around theme park community for a very long time. He's not one that like makes stuff up either. He typically not that you're always right when you get stuff, but he doesn't just make stuff up for headlines, at least historically. He said basically he put in a blog, or it wasn't a blog post, it was on a forum. And he said, I'm hearing the initial plans for Villains Land have been scrapped. Imagineers have been told to think of bigger, bolder ideas, budget secondary. Not sure if this is new players, new game, RE Josh as CEO, which is, of course, has kicked off a lot of opinions about this, given Villains Land has a lot riding on it. I would say out of all the things Disney's building, the biggest potential, I think, is Villains Land in terms of what fans and people have been asking for. What do you guys think about this? Do you think it's true? Do you hope it's true? And, what might this mean for Villains Land going forward?
It's interesting. I was on Vash's channel today, actually, Parkcast. I was on there earlier today. We talked about this quite a bit where, for me personally, it can kind of go two ways, right? It could be legitimate. It could be Josh D'Amaro coming in and being like, hey, you know what? Hey, there's a new sheriff in town and I want better. I really want to hit a home run, because you really do want that momentum out the gate, right? You really do want to start having those good headlines the first 12 to 18 months as CEO. It's important to build that momentum. It can also go in another direction, though. Prior to Josh running for that CEO, the parks really didn't get a whole lot done. It was kind of like these projects never really got off the ground. And I heard, a lot of murmurs out there that it took a lot for Josh to approve these projects and what have you. I'm just worried that this is another one of those things where it's like, it's kind of a game a little bit where it's like, yeah, go back to the drawing board, everybody, kind of rethink your plans, and it pushes that project out further down the road. And it's sort of wrapped in this cloak of yeah, but we're doing it for a better product. I don't know. I'm hoping that's not what it is. I'm hoping it's legitimately he saw this and was like, hey, you know what, we can do better. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous that it was sort of a kicking the can down the road sort of endeavor. And hey, what better way to sort of dress that up than to say we're trying to make it better, right? And Josh is very good at this PR and this sort of, I mean, this is look, even the Muppet thing, the Muppet 3D stuff. They got rid of Muppets, but it was like, hey, look over here. But we're gonna get the Muppet. We're gonna put the Muppets over in the Rock and Roller Coaster building. There's always like this thing where it's like the negative, but then we're trying to like offset it. I hope that's not what this is. It's delayed, but hey, we're making it better. You know what I'm saying? But we'll see. I don't know. I'm that's me speculating.
Well, even at D23, Josh presented all that stuff, and the next day, like, by the way, the rivers are going away, all this other stuff. So, like, it wouldn't be uncommon. But go ahead, Vash. What were you going to say?
No, that's exactly it, right? So when this, Villains Land and Cars Land were originally announced, it was at the D23 Expo. That would have been September of 2024, right? And at the time, it was like, oh, we're getting all this cool stuff in Magic Kingdom. That is awesome, great, fantastic. 2 days later, after everybody flies home and the expo has concluded, a Disney Parks blog breaks the news. Oh yes, about that.
By the way,
we're cutting Rivers of America, and for a lot of people, it was like, that's super devastating. And especially when you look at those Cars concepts, it's like, is this necessarily worth it? A lot of people felt it was an ad, not a replace. And that was very specifically timed, right? From Josh Giamaro. Didn't want to break that news on the stage. We'll go ahead and leave that to a Parks blog post afterwards. And so I look at this and I have some skepticism, just like OG does, right? So it was revealed recently, very recently actually, that the initial plans were filed. I believe it was a notice of commencement with the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District and the South Florida Water Management District. Yes, Swift Mud and Sif Todd. There you go. And it was revealed kind of the rough blueprint of what was actually going in there, right? And basically, we saw 2 large show buildings at the rear that was going to be Villains Land. And people were looking at that going, that's not even, not one of them is even comparable to the size of Rise of Resistance, for example. And it was kind of like, we're giving up a lot for this. This has got to be really, really strong, especially with, Dark Universe, and, Universal's not slowing up on that gas. And this is the one thing that fans have been waiting for honestly decades. And so it's kind of like, oh, is this going to be all, that it's trumped up to be? Some people very excited still. Other people had a little bit of trepidation with that. And so I do wonder if this rumor is a response to that. Now, we were discussing before the show here, various sources between all of us and so forth. I know I have been hearing that this might not be true. I've also heard that this did happen, but before, right? In a very similar way that maybe like Bob Iger, for example, the first initial plan for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, right, was rejected. And they went back and they reformulated it for the sequel trilogy. I'm not saying that that's what's happening here. I'm just saying this seems to be, at least from what I've heard, is close to that, but I could be wrong as well. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, like, what you guys are saying, totally valid. And, like, it would not be uncommon for any company, including Disney, to play the optics game. And also, Villains Land's so far off. I've said it's going to be well into the 2030s where this thing's done, which does always put it at risk of budget cuts because it's like the afterthought. And then if we get to it, especially a new CEO coming in. But the other thing about it that I think is a positive in that I love competition is, like, if they're feeling that pressure from Universal of, like, we have to deliver on this because you're going to have this directly compared to Dark Universe. It's going to be different, but they're definitely going to be comparisons there. And I do know Imagineers have gone over there. That part at least lends some sort of, like, I could see that scenario being there. Now, I know somebody that's I'm not going to say they're high up in certain department. I'm not going to name it, but I did send them a message to say, hey, is there truth to this? And they told me yes. And that this was what Josh was doing and that the budget wasn't necessarily bigger, like a little bit, but maybe spread out more, which that was curious. He didn't really go into more details there, but that's just one person that I talked to. Again, like you were saying, you'd heard otherwise as well. I find it interesting potentially that whatever they did bring to the table, if they did realize this isn't good enough, I suppose that is encouraging. If it's the other way where they're just trying to play the optics game, obviously that's not a great thing. And if it ends up being a longer wait for this and it doesn't do what it needs to do, that's going to be even worse, especially given the Disney's construction timelines. But theme park philosophy, Jose, what do you have to say about this?
I hate speculation. I really do, because it's so hard to qualify things that you're hearing unless you have a really good, reliable insider source. And it just seems to me right now we're going off of third-hand information, whether it's Lantessa or whether it's, some people leaking out little bits of information. And unfortunately, it's really hard to like quantify what an improvement means in this case. And like, OG and like OG and Vash have pointed out, what does that even mean? Because unless there is some kind of a change in the notice of commencement, unless we see some kind of actual documentation that's submitted to Central Florida in terms of like plan changes when it comes to architecture or laying down the foundational work, it's all really just hearsay. And I don't really personally don't like to entertain any sort of hearsay. I'll dance around it. I can maybe have, I might jump in and out of what that hearsay may be. But Joss is just so good at spin that this could mean anything from, hey, we've identified an issue, and we need a little bit extra time before we can actually proceed forward in the further development of this land. It could mean something like that. What that issue could be, it could be something foundational. It could be something like we haven't decided if we're going to add a third attraction, further west in the back. That's one of the other speculations that I've heard, is that they're expanding a little bit more westward, and they might go from the traditional 2 attractions to a third. What does that look like in terms of timeframes? Is that going to be an opening day attraction? Is that going to be an expansion plot that they plan on developing a year after the land opens? So it's more than I think that I want to entertain right now in 2026, at least at the onset of us hearing this information. And with Josh being so good at spin, I don't know. There's really not a lot we can like factually say here. I will say this. I think there are some facts that we couldn't allude to here. Darkmoor is certainly competition, but I think that I've been to Darkmoor, it's not the land that I would directly compare or say is the measure that this land needs to be measured to, because Darkmoor, while it's good, it does leave a lot to be desired. Yeah, it's very small. The werewolf ride aesthetically is very how can you put it? It's the netting really does break the immersion. So there's not much there. And then once you finish the main attraction, there's really not much to do. You're riding a roller coaster, you might have some thematic food, and you're out. So I would say it's more apropos to compare it to Diagon Alley if we're talking about like a villains-esque land. I still think that's going to be the measure, maybe with Darkmoor as well, but certainly Epic Universe's next generation Imagineering, Universal creative approach is definitely going to be the bar that it has to hit. But yeah, I don't know. I personally, if I'm Disney, if I'm Josh, and I'm the new head of the company, I would prefer not to compete with Universal in terms of it's kind of hard not to compete with Universal because they are your number one competitor. But at the same time, you want to try to raise the bar a little bit. Otherwise, you end up with another Galaxy's Edge debacle. And I think that's the problem they had with Galaxy's Edge. They were directly competing and trying to answer Universal Studios when they should have risen the bar and said, hey, look, that's great what you guys did with Diagon Alley, but here's what we present to you with Star Wars. And unfortunately, they didn't do that. The budgets were secondary to everything else. And that's what we got. Now, if it turns out Josh says, hey, look, budgets aren't secondary anymore, we're going to give them the money, OLC style, go crazy, I'm all for that. I just don't have any evidence of that as Josh D'Amaro's tenure as chairman of experiences.
Well, and the interesting thing too is we've seen this before, right? So let's just play devil's advocate. Let's just say, okay, Josh legitimately saw problems and he wants it to be a better product. That's encouraging because we've seen that kind of thing happen before with like Tom Staggs, where Tom was like, you know what, new Fantasyland, there's nothing for the boys. I have little boys at home and there's nothing here for them. It's all princess stuff. And then you guys got the mine train, right? So if we take it at face value, like Josh looked at the plans and really legitimately felt they could do better, that's super encouraging. I love that. But like you were saying, Jose, it's like it's hard because Josh is a very good salesman, and it's like, what do you believe? And this has been my issue with him kind of from the get, is that he's a little too smooth. He's got a lot of riz.
That's true. Let's steel man this even further here, because Josh's background is so unbelievably interesting, right? Because people feel like, oh well, he's just another Parks guy, just like Bob Chapek. Couldn't be farther from it, and that's what makes him most interesting in this regard. Because Josh Yamaro, he comes absolutely from the parks, versus like Bob Chapek. He only spent the last 5 years of his career in parks before he was made CEO. Right. He really came from consumer products, the vault, and so forth. Right, and then he was dropped into the role of the head of Disney, I guess, Parks and Resorts. Right, and then actually took consumer products and merged with Parks and Resorts to make Disney Parks Experiences and Products, now just Experiences. And so I that's kind of something that's very interesting, because we've never really had somebody steeped 27 years of their career in the parks themselves, making their way to CEO. I am very curious as to what changes could be made, right? So that's one mark for him. Also, too, he has an art background, which is very interesting. Before he went to Georgetown University in order to become a business major, he actually, I think his mom was like the head of some art council or something or another. I had to refer to my notes on this one. But he was actually in the middle of making like a 12-foot sculpture out of steel. He was actually welding on one of the arms before it was, he was doing this at 2 a.m. before he was like, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to support a family with this. So that's what he goes to Georgetown University right there. So he kind of has an eye, and we know he has an eye because he's used it before. I was lucky enough to be privy to an internal presentation from Disney back in the day. And one of the things that was part of by an Imagineer that was giving this presentation was that Josh D'Amaro apparently gave them a note about Tropical Americas, saying that the buildings themselves can't look like they're just repainted. Now, one would think, apparently they did look like they were just repainted, right? And he's actually putting in a note to say like it has to look a little bit more substantial. So in that way, he kind of has like a creative eye. But as OG astutely pointed out right there, it was very difficult to get anything approved while under him. And that was before, I guess, this $60 billion tranche right here, which they're even saying the bulk of it is going to show up until the latter half of that 10-year plan right there. So I want to believe that this is improvement, but I think theme park philosophy is absolutely correct. What does improvement mean? Is it better for the guest? Better for them. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I've always wondered about Josh is how much of the park stuff was him and how much, and I've talked to this numerous times, how much of it was the C-suite pushing more of the park stuff and we'll get our answer at some point because him in charge, we're going to know really quickly if he was held back or whatever it was. But the only thing that I'm the same way. I hope it's true because coming out the gate, he's going to want to make an impact. And that makes the most sense. He's going to make an impact on the parks because that's what he knows. That's where he comes from. That's the biggest moneymaker for the entire company. And if you know that this is potentially the biggest thing that's going to come, which I think it is out of all the stuff they're building, it makes a lot of sense. If you did see something in here you did not like, then you're saying, no, it needs to be bigger and better. But it's a very good point about the rides because, like, I don't even know at this point if they've selected rides. I mean, I'm sure you can change them. But if they've gone, it depends on how far deep they are, all this stuff. It could be delayed a lot. But I've kind of felt the whole time they were still going on field trips for like inspiration. Yeah. So I don't really know even how far down the line they currently even are with all this stuff.
Right. But the research trips, even our knowledge of them was months ago. Right. So this land has been in development. And from what I understand, even with Avatar, Disney California Adventure, they have spent millions of dollars on development for these new lands. Now, obviously they can change. It's like, hey, you know what? Things don't work out and you go into a different direction. I would say this is the indicator to know whether or not this is true. Substantially anyway. if they amend the filings for what they've already filed. Right. If they amend those, then okay, something absolutely did change. But if they didn't, then it might be just set dressing, which I hope that's not the case. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look, if we're losing Rivers of America at Magic Kingdom, I want it to be for a good darn reason, right? I want the best attractions possible. But the fact that they felt that they, maybe needed to improve and so forth, and the fact that it was so closely timed to when they actually did file those plans, I'm not sure about that.
Well, and like you were saying, Jose, it's like, what does improvement mean? And then you're also talking about this land's probably close to a decade away at this point. So it's like, how much? I'm curious how much they have set in stone, and like, because they're clear and like they're kind of like grading the land, but I don't believe they're going to really start anything heavy over there. Probably, I don't think they've actually said. I would assume until like obviously Tropical Americas is done, maybe the other two projects are done before they really get heavy on Villains Land. But yeah, it's like you need to have, I mean, I've even said too, go 3 rides in here, not just your typical 2. One that's a really good one that's, like your Flight of Passage and your Navi River. If you had 2 or 3 really big attractions in here, that would be something that would be much different. But I think a lot of this comes into, at least in my opinion, if you look at like all the Wizarding World stuff, it comes down to the details in those lands. Like if you're a fan of those books and movies, it's all these little things that you can just go explore for hours on end. And if these lands don't have those things in them, I think that a lot of it is those details. Like the rides are great, the theming's there, but if they don't have the little things right about this, I think this is where it'll fall short. And then you don't want to go into a Galaxy's Edge where 10 years later you're trying to sort of rehab it and do things you should have done the first time. Like, I don't know, have Star Wars music in a Star Wars land. That might be a good start there. But stuff like that, it's hard to know. And I agree, speculation, I think it's fun, but who really knows where it lies? And it's so far out, you're not going to get a clear picture of all this.
Well, and the other thing too is this particular land, at least based on the concept art, you mentioned Galaxy's Edge. If they're not careful, it can kind of fall in that Galaxy's Edge trap. Because Galaxy's Edge was always a cool looking land. It always had like dope rock work, and it was cool looking, but it didn't have any pulse to it. This could fall into that if you don't have enough kinetic energy, enough going on in here. It's a lot of pretty rock work with nothing going on. It could easily feel just as empty. So they have to be careful with that.
Well, and I think it's more difficult for them too, because you're gonna have to make this land not too kiddie, but also not too scary. Like they kind of have a very narrow thread to needle. That's not the term. Neat corridor to go down. I'm making up terms. To hit this right, and I think it's tougher compared to Universal. Like I'm not saying Darkmoor is like the thing you need to measure it against, but they're not literally limited. Like they can be like, hey, it's a PG-13 land. This is not made for kids. Disney doesn't have that luxury with this, so they got to try and satisfy 2 different groups. And I think that's it's not so easy, I think, on its face here.
Well, and you don't want to have, in my opinion at least, you don't want to have like the parade villains. Like I don't want to have like a rubberhead Hades walking through this land. Like the land looks too dope for that. You know what I'm saying? Like I think they should maybe have more face characters, reimagine the costumes and stuff to kind of make it fit the land. Because like a rubberhead Jafar, and I don't know, it would look a little corny in this land. Maybe I'm
just waddling around in there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being like a nitpicky fanboy, but I just feel like with this land and how creepy and cool it looks, to have that rubberhead villain walking through is like okay.
And also put in the most notorious villain in all of the Disney catalog, which is Peter Pan, because he's a villain. 100%.
100%.
I don't know why this is even controversial, but yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that for sure. Go ahead.
I find it very interesting because I don't know if you guys saw, but the 1991 Jeffrey Katzenberg memo that he sent to the company started making the rounds again only a couple of weeks ago, and I read the whole thing. One of the lines was, "It is our job as creators to understand what the expectations are and to meet them, right, from audiences." I hope, because I think Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, I think kind of outthought those expectations, right? And so a lot of people maybe coming in with expectations weren't necessarily met with something that was at that level or better. It was just kind of like underwhelming to at least some people out there. So I do wonder if they understand what the expectations might be in this and how they can best meet them. So that's going to be a very difficult challenge for them, because I think you're right. I think there are some what is it? Some I guess threads with needles there that you're gonna make right there. See, I screwed it up myself.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's the problem, because it's still Magic Kingdom. You still have to make it somewhat kid friendly, but at the same time, you really do want to lean into that villainous aspect of these characters.
I think that is definitely a challenge with this. We got a couple. I'm gonna catch up real quick on some super chats. We got Cliff Flicks for a 5. What's up, Cliff? He says, "Who didn't like what Imagineers created, and why did they scrap it? Are they publicly admitting there is a problem at WDI? Why tell us this?" It's a good question.
I mean, it is a good question. I don't think this is necessarily indicative of a problem at WDI. I mentioned this on Vash's channel today, actually, where there seems to be a lot of creative people at WDI, because overseas they hit home run after home run, whether it be Zootopia or Fantasy Springs. Clearly the talent is there. I just feel like I think if there's a problem, I think it's probably something along the lines of like, hey, like kind of like what we saw with New Fantasyland, right? Where it's like, hey, it's not hitting all the marks we really want to hit. Maybe there's debate about what villains to use. It could be that too, right? Which ones work best, which ones don't, stuff like that. But I don't think
that villain show is a test run. They're trying to figure out what villains people want to see. In my opinion, I think that's exactly what that show is. It's an active test screening to see what people, because those screens, you can interchange all those very easily in that show.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't necessarily think there's that points to like a problem in Imagineering, because this has been kind of a case for a while. I mean, with you test it, you kind of adjust plans as you go. I mean, it happened a lot with Michael Eisner's era too. I mean, plans changed. It wasn't always so cut and dry. So I don't think it points to necessarily a problem at Universal. I mean, at Imagineering, but I think for me, it's not so much of that. For me, the biggest concern is whether it's the truth or not. Whether or not, look, if they really see a creative issue or a gap and they want to fix it, I'm all in on that. My bigger concern is that it's not really that, and it's like, hey, we want to spread this out over more fiscal periods. What's a good excuse to do that? Well, that's my bigger concern.
That's a really good point from even the guy I talked to, is saying it's like more spread out. I'm like, well, what does that really mean? Like, why is that better? Unless you're just spreading it out, unless the thinking is you spread it out longer because that allows you to spend more money eventually. But even then, I don't know. It definitely seems weird.
We're gonna have one popcorn stand, and we're gonna have two. No, joking. No, I don't think it's that bad.
Golden cardigan goes up on a statue somewhere.
It could be like Rockwork, right? In order to separate, like the nearby Carland, right, but the nearby Liberty Square area, which I don't know how long it has left, but it could be that. That's a very interesting thing there, Jared. But we are in the, Rivers of America's gone. We're in the grading, area now, and we have filed notice of commencements for construction. Assuming that this was recent, it is pretty late in the game for something like this to come about. I'm not saying it doesn't have any precedent, but it is kind of fascinating. I suppose, to Cliff Flix's point, if there is an internal problem with Imagineering, I am kind of surprised that they wouldn't have dipped into the bud before all of this.
Yeah,
and Cliff Flix's disposition is completely reasonable here, because under the current Disney tenure, we have rarely ever had an instance where, if ever at all, anybody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys please correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't get many instances where Disney admits fault to bad decisions.
Almost never.
and so for Josh to say, hey, we're going to plus this attraction while still in pre-development. When was the last time that ever happened? Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's, well, you guys are going to get what we promised, so what we're going to deliver is going to be short. It's going to be a shortcoming, but and then they try to fluff it up in some other kind of a way. Window dressings. So, Humidor Hall, huh? Right? But
no.
I think everybody's caution towards this is completely reasonable, and really there should be no reason to assume that they're admitting fault right at the outset, because we haven't been under a leadership that is comfortable admitting fault. And we, I think that really points to the one interview that we just recently saw with Michael Eisner. And, a true leader, he admits fault all the time. And that was the one thing about Eisner. He was just so very human. And not everything that he said was, like catered and,
You didn't feel like you're being spun to. He was just kind of exactly what he was
right. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, you weren't in this. You weren't in the spin zone, and a lot of it is because he's a New York man. He came from a New York family, and yes, he was prestigious. It was a prestigious family. His dad was a lawyer, though, but that attitude, it just bleeds through. That that New York personality just really bleeds through, and it's really appreciative. But if this ends up being, Josh is very admissive of faults and mistakes, and hey, you know what, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. They did it with the Galaxy's Edge. He came out and said that people aren't happy with Galaxy's Edge. Okay, great.
Point. He even pointed out Smuggler's Run too recently. He even said that about that ride.
That's right, Smuggler's Run. I'm sorry. Yeah, people aren't happy about Smuggler's Run.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I want to see more of that. Now, if there is a track record of them admitting faults and fixing their faults, then yes, that will be the modus operandi that we can all say, hey, this is the way the company is now running. But right now, I have no reason to assume that that's the case.
Well, I guess it probably comes down to, is there a paradigm shift in the company under Josh where now you're going to be more, and I think it would be a better move. I think we've talked about before, OG, about authenticity is really the currency of the modern day.
100%.
Being more authentic, and you don't have to say like, oh, this thing was a massive bomb, but if you're even willing, even when they canceled the Star Cruiser, they acted like that thing was a success in the press release. And you're just like, it closed down after a year. Like, what are you talking about? So like the willingness to even admit like it would be new. And I suppose if you're hopeful, maybe there's a different direction with this, but until it's proven, that's how I operate. Like in humans, they operate off patterns. Right. If that pattern changes, then you can say, okay, maybe something's different. But if that pattern stays the same, there's no reason other than just hope that any of this will change. And I think that's a good place to operate from. You can be hopeful, but let's see what actually happens with any of this stuff.
And I want to just add real quick. Sure. And the pattern needs to look like this. It needs to be a pattern recognition of identifying a problem, listening to your customer base, and then applying what you've learned from your customers into the solution. Because if it doesn't look like that, then you're going to have another Galaxy's Edge issue. Provost Park Pass, credit to him, he actually was one that pointed this out, that the Galaxy's Edge problem, which is rooted in its decision and storytelling, is actually a repeat problem that Disney created back when they created Snow White Scary Adventures. When people first rode Snow White Scary Adventures, there was no Snow White in it because you were Snow White. And so guests left wondering where's Snow White? And they would have to explain, well, that's you. And then they had to shut down the ride, redesign it, include Snow White into it. And what was the thing they learned from that is the people don't always want to be the center of the story. In the Galaxy's Edge, you're once again the center of the story, which is why it feels discombobulated. And so Disney repeated the same mistake that they learned with Disney's with Snow White Scary Adventures. And my fear is that they make this storytelling mistake once again and make you the center of the story when people just want to meet, Cruella and Gaston, and they just want to meet the villains and have photo ops with them. And it's a very simple thing, right? So that's my main concern.
Well, here and this is another thing that I think we should consider too. The two projects that are the furthest out, we're talking Villains Land and we're talking Pandora at DCA, are the two projects that are kind of muddy right now. Like we're kind of like, it seems like things are happening behind the scenes, right? It's like it's possible that maybe Josh is saying, hey, look, you know what? Coco boat ride at DCA, the Avengers ride, those are too far along. I can't really do anything about that. I can't really do much about a lot of these projects already being built. But what I can do something about are the things that are 4, 5, 6 years out, which is Pandora and Villains Land. And so he's making moves where he as I say in rap, you're going to get in where you fit in, So basically he's trying to make moves where he can, essentially, right?
That's a good point. No, I mean, but the risk comes from outthinking, like I think the initial plans for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge might have been more in tune with what people ultimately wanted, and those were rejected, right? Because it's like, okay, well, priorities change, or in this case, Force Awakens made $1 billion at the box office, $2 billion actually. So it's like, okay, we're going to sit on that. It's like, okay, but I guess theme park philosopher is exactly correct in his analysis of how this kind of solution, problem solving, should work, right? And ideally, I would like that to happen at the development stage, because after, right, is so much more difficult to rectify, right? Exactly. It's a lot of money. Like we had to live with these attractions 10, 20, 30, 40 years. If you look at Giants by Adventure, for example, at least aspects of it, you look at, Epcot, you look at, some of this other stuff that's come out, it's like, this isn't quick fixes if you don't like this, and these are budgeted for 10-year, 20-year, 30-year timescales. We get to live with this until Burbank says, okay, well, maybe we redo some, do something again. But by that time, I don't know if I'm even going to be on YouTube at that point. I really hope, we get this act together. Look, I agree with OG here, because it's so far out. That can leave a lot of room to play. And I do wonder if that's taking place here. I think your analysis on Avatar is actually very astute, because that $1.4 billion figure is just, I can't imagine that's where they want it to be. And so it's like, do we do something here? Do we I don't know, make it smaller? Possible. Maybe we take out an attraction or so forth. Maybe we stick with it. Best case scenario, but there's just a lot of wiggle room here that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with. When it comes to this, I like how Josh Giamaro is kind of saying the right things. I think HBR had that story where he tells like a room full of Imagineers, like 30 people or something like that. Hey, people they like this attraction, they don't love it. And so, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and try to overcome these things. Oh man, you only get one chance to make a first impression. That's the most unfortunate thing about that. Even if they fix it, everybody will know it as the Reddit was.
Yeah, no, and I did like that comment. I said on my channel a few days ago where I did like that comment that he made. I do like, and again, it's Josh. He's got a lot of charisma. He knows how to talk, so it's not a surprise, I guess. But there was a lot of candor in that remark where he admitted, hey, you know what? People like Smuggler's Run, but they don't love it. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. That's fair. I don't think people hate the ride, but they certainly don't love it, right? So it's a fair assessment. I hope we see more of that going forward when he's in charge next month and he's running the show. I want to see more of that honesty out there. I was really disappointed, honestly, with that Bob Iger and Josh Giamaro interview on ABC. I really was. I saw it was completely pointless. It was essentially a Bob Iger legacy fluff piece.
Yeah.
And I want to hear more from the new guy. I want to hear more from what Josh wants to do. You know what? Get Bob out of there and put Dana Wald in there. Let's hear from the two new people running the company. Why do we have Bob Iger here? And then Josh Giamaro sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting next to Bob Iger. It's like, come on. You work with the guy every day.
That part where he said, like, Bob's like, well, I'm always by the phone. He's like, I'm going to call him. I'm like, don't call him. Just leave him alone. Call Michael Eisner. Call Michael Eisner, please.
Yeah, call Michael. That'd be very interesting.
And that's another thing too, of like, I wonder how many moves are you going to make with Bob in the building still? Like, is that going to be something that holds him back for a little bit? Like, this has been a thing I've wondered the entire time.
I just asked Bob Chapek about that experience.
Well, exactly.
That's the thing. And the thing I worry about as well is also the influence of Dana Walden. Remember, Chapek didn't have to necessarily deal with that, but now you have this kind of a CEO, this chief creative officer, and this president next to you. And I do wonder how this is all going to mesh and who might be stepping on each other's toes. And then, you're going to be working under the big boss for just a period of time right there as a senior advisor. That's going to be Bob Iger's role right there. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happening here. And so I do agree with you, OG. I'd like to see a little bit more candor. Now, Michael Eisner, he's a straight shooter, right? And he can be because, well, as a CEO, if you say the wrong thing, stock goes down, right? So there's a little bit less leeway there for sure. But I do agree, like, it was some padded answers, not really showing a lot right there. Just affirmatively say, hey, look, listen, we stand behind creatives. We look at AI as certainly tools that empower our creatives. We're not really interested in losing jobs because of that. Simple thing, go on. Or maybe say, hey, you know what? Mistakes were maybe made with Disney Plus. We're going to go ahead and correct them, and that's why I've been chosen to lead this company. that kind of stuff. And we didn't really hear any of that.
And then
Yeah.
Bob gives him a glare eye to the side, like, "What are you doing? How dare you say that?"
Our good friend, I just want to bring up one thing real quick, because our good friend, Mr. Theme Park Wizard, is saying here,
What's up,
I know you all don't believe me, but don't be surprised when Villain Land has 4 rides. He said he's heard this from multiple people. That's fascinating.
I hope that's the case. If that is the case, that would be going well above and beyond.
Spinner ride, teacup ride. Okay, I got you. I'm getting right in it. No, I'm joking.
Dylan swirling saucers. There you go. Put it that way.
No, 4 immersive rides, honestly.
Oh, it's huge.
Would we think of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge differently if it had that third?
Man, yeah.
100%.
Well, and Vash, to your
These
Vash,
make a difference.
Vash, to your point. I mean, that's exactly why one of the reasons why the land feels so empty, because it was 15 acres with the mindset of a restaurant and the Banthas and the 2 rides. So for all those things, it felt full. When you cut this stuff out, 15 acres now feels like a vast emptiness,
And remember the Legends of Frontierland aspect that was cut right there. That would have added even more play there. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I've always felt Galaxy's Edge feels like Space Baghdad to me. It just, it doesn't feel like Star Wars at all to me. But before we get, I just want to get a couple of these. We do have some gifted memberships from Kiki and Luca. One there's Orange Grove 55. One to the channel here. Thank you, Kiki and Luca. And we have another 10 from Cliff Flicks. Thank you, Cliff. And he says, Vash knows exactly how Burbank throttles construction speed based on quarterly CapEx expenses and profit reports. Villain's construction speed will depend heavily on future quarterly company success.
That's true.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
So what he's talking about here, for people that might not be familiar, is Chapek really got pretty bad under Chapek, but Disney has had this philosophy in which you can stretch out CapEx over multiple quarters in order to reduce your overall impact, right? Your overall revenue impact. The idea being that, hey, like for Tron, for example, that's like one of the best examples. We would see construction, everybody's out there, they're doing a great job, they're getting everything ready, and then we go with weeks with nothing. It's like, that's a little weird. And then, the quarter would come around and, everybody's back again. And then nothing. They stretch this out. And I'm sorry, but that's simply not been the philosophy of somebody like Universal. I mean, it's like, come rain, shine, weekends, whatever. They're moving. And that's one of the differences here.
Oh, I would do the updates on Epic Universe construction. Like a week would go by, and you're like, "What? Like they got a building up. Like you're just all of a sudden all this stuff pops up out of nowhere." And I remember the Epcot construction. I don't know. Most of the time, my wife and I would be on the monorail, and there was nobody doing anything. Like I never recalled going on the monorail and actually seeing work happening. And then, of course, the end product I think left a lot of people very underwhelmed with, say, Communicore Hall, which kind of looks like my college dining hall in many ways, but that's I don't know, maybe they'll eventually do something with that. But we do have a couple more super chats here. We got Ill Magic for 2 says, rich evenings, fella. What's up?
And I will always love your name, Ill Magic. I'm a big Nas fan myself. And Illmatic, I love it. I love it.
He also dropped a 5, and he says, do you guys think they could have kept the dinosaurs ride, get rid of Dino Land to make room for Indiana Jones in Animal Kingdom?
They could have kept it, but that would have been a lot more money.
I like dinosaur. I really do, or at least I really did. Past tense right there. The problem is that even when dinosaur was going, I mean, Indiana Jones at Disneyland, and I know it's a different park, different location. I got that. But you're talking about a park in which, not many attractions exist. And even still, the wait time, especially with dinosaurs, would be like, what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes? And we know, OG, that, and Jerry too, I'm sure, philosopher, that throughput on that ride is not like super high. So It's like, why isn't this doing the business? And it's a very expensive ride to maintain. So yes, could they keep it? Sure. Did they want to? No. And that's why they're getting rid of so many things. Remember, Jeff Valley, underutilized. Think about what that means.
Yeah,
that's a great point. I've
never been a big fan of dinosaur. I always felt like it just was in the dark, throwing you around, and then a dinosaur yells at you. So it's never been my favorite ride. But I love Indiana Jones. I don't know how well it fits into Animal Kingdom and Tropical Americas, and I've obviously have questions about. And I'm curious what you think about this, Vash, because Encanto's kind of strange to me because it came out around COVID. You didn't have the big box office. It did really good on Disney Plus, but there's really been no rumors of a sequel. I'm curious how much of a draw that all that's going to be for Animal Kingdom. I think it's going to help the park regardless, but I think you had mentioned this, Jose, in our previous live stream. It's not going to make up that difference of that 35% dip in attendance they've had since 2019. And they're going to have to add more stuff to it. But I'm just curious what the overall impact of that is, or if people wait until more of this stuff's done before they really come into the parks more.
I'll answer real fast and then go to the philosopher because I think he has some really great stuff on this. Remember, Josh Giamaro has that one distinction of being in charge of not just parks, but consumer products. He knows what sells. So yes, to your point, Jared, it didn't make a lot of money at the box office, but it did sell a heck of a ton of merch, and it did make that cultural impact that they were looking for. Bob Chapek was very descriptive about this on various earnings calls in which we bring that up, and he also referred to it as a franchise. So there has been discussion about making, 2, 3, however many, I guess, Disney wants to go into that well, I suppose. We're going to be talking about Bruno for a long time, it looks like. But, so, and this is one of the ways. Remember when Bob Chapek originally said Disney Plus offers us the ability to examine consumer taste, consumer habits, etc.? This is born from that, right? It's like, okay, this gets a lot of plays, this gets a lot of views, this gets a lot of merch sold, and so that's why it is put into Tropical Americas. And to be honest, there is a lot of fervor for it. So pretty good addition to the park, especially one needing so many family attractions, especially dark rides. Philosopher, please go ahead.
Let me ask you this, guys. Josh has a different approach when it comes to the parks. I think that he's going to want WDI to have more of an active process when it comes to generating motion for the company. I think that so far they've only been reactionary to what the studios are putting out. Now, back to Encanto. Could it be, and this is just my thinking here, could it be that he's using, or they're using Encanto to re-energize interest into the IP again, so that way the studios can take that momentum and use that synergy or create some synergy within the company to have an Encanto 2 movie. So that way when that ride opens, not long thereafter, they can release another film and have that synergy across entertainment and experiences. Do you think that's a possibility here? Do you think in this particular case that experiences is leading in this aspect of a synergistic merger between their movies and the rides?
I personally believe this is more about fixing Animal Kingdom, because Animal Kingdom, like for me, I loved Animal Kingdom. It was my favorite park, but I'm a vibes guy. I can walk around and do nothing all day and love it. So that's me. I can do that all day and so Animal Kingdom is the perfect place for me because there's not a whole. It's all vibes, it's all atmosphere, right? But families don't want what I want. Like families want to go on rides. They want to do stuff. They don't want to sit around and enjoy the atmosphere, right? To that degree. So I think Animal Kingdom does have a problem with that, where a lot of families see it as like they still see it as a zoo. That's another problem. It's a zoo, and there's not a lot of rides. Yeah. And so they're trying to fix that perception of that park, and it closes at 6:30.
Well, and I can tell you, my kids don't care anything about Animal Kingdom. I mean, once they used to like the Triceratops spin stuff and all, the Dino Land USA stuff. But I think now, mind you, my kids will like the Encanto stuff. I'm not saying that it's not going to be help the park. I've been always curious because this is kind of the first, to your point, Vash. It's like the first thing we've really seen that kind of comes from streaming. Because that's really like, and Chapek wasn't wrong. I mean, one of the reasons you want a streaming service, you have all that data at your fingertips. You know how long people are watching all this stuff. Versus in the movie theaters, you got ticket sales, but you don't know what stuff's really hitting with people from I guess, just a hard data point. So, and to your point though, as well, Jose, it's very possible they could use this as the way, as showing the popularity of it, to then launch that into like an Encanto 2. If it really is a huge hit potentially,
which would be unique, because I don't think we've ever seen that work that way. We've had various iterations. For example, Night Before Christmas, right? It's probably the most the best example I can think of from a Disney perspective. Night Before Christmas didn't really do all that well at the box office, but sold a lot of merch. And when they incorporated into the Night Before Christmas overlay for Haunted Mansion Holiday, I mean, it was did gangbusters, right? Did extremely well, extremely busy, and as a merchandise driver. And it spawned Oogie Boogie Bash, which has also been another great seller for the company. But you've never really heard of them dipping their toes into it from a creative standpoint from the entertainment side of the company. So this would be, I think, a first. If Philosopher is correct. And he might, I think he might very well be. Because, again, Josh Chiamaro is a Parks guy. Just a little bit different of a mentality than the studio heads we've had before.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, it's similar to like Stitch. I don't think Stitch had a huge box office on that first original movie, but then it's grown to where like my daughter and all the, I think all girls from like 8 to 12 just love Stitch. And he's like, you put a Stitch meet and greet out there and it's got lines for days. And which is wonder, I'm actually surprised they haven't done a Stitch ride given it how well it did at the box office and how big Stitch is overall, that you still have that empty spot in Tomorrowland, which I know we can talk about hours about Tomorrowland of both coasts. They just don't even understand what it is.
Big, beautiful tomorrow.
Exactly. No, exactly. Well, and the interesting thing too, not to go on a side quest too deep, but like, you know, Lilo and Stitch is an interesting franchise where it could comfortably fit in Tomorrowland, depending on the direction. You know, if you lean in on the Stitch stuff, but it can also fit comfortably like in an Adventureland if you lean into like the Hawaii Islander thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential with that franchise, and they haven't really tapped into it, to be honest with you. So
I haven't heard any rumblings about it either. I actually really thought after the live action remake that they would have had a little bit more something might be coming with Stitch, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Hey, whoa. Before Rose Gold, there was toilet paper. Okay, on that castle right there, big time stuff. No, but no, well, it is a big revenue driver, though. I mean, to Jared's point, I think WW Pro did an in-depth analysis of how much money it made just on merch. I mean, it was in the multi-billions, unbelievably successful. I believe it actually outpaced Star Wars.
I was going to say, I think actually
big.
above Star Wars and maybe in line with Marvel at this point of like the sales of it.
Is absolutely wild. You would think that they would kind of lean into that just a little bit, rather than just number two. But that's
another thing, right? We talk Lilo and Stitch box office. Well, look at Zootopia. I think it was posted in the chat. 1.9. What was it? 1.9 billion. We're basically at $2 billion now for Zootopia 2. That could also be a factor with DCA because maybe Disney's going. Like you brought that up, Philosopher, where maybe they will do Zootopia. I don't know. Because it seems I said no initially because I thought they don't want to change the plan this far into it. But clearly they don't mind doing that because already they're going back to the drawing board with Villains Land. So there's an appetite for it apparently. So it could be Zootopia. Who knows?
It got a 3D show. Come on. Okay. I think we've seen plenty of representation already. No, that was kind of a very strange decision to have done that, to use that franchise in that way. I mean, I guess, okay, filling a hole, whatever. But it's like, I think even stumped Disney, just how unbelievably successful that franchise is. I mean, they had success in China, and that's why they built Shanghai's Zootopia, expansion, right? But, I mean, and the what if segment. Oh, gee, you remember the what if segment? I believe that was the 2022 D23 Expo right there. Yes. One of the concepts was the Zootopia attraction next to a Moana attraction in Animal Kingdom. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. We got a few super chats we'll get to as well. We got a 5 from O2RR. Thank you very much. Says, hello, everyone. Hello again, Vash. My first time watching this show, so I look forward to getting to know this group better in the future. Well, welcome, O2RR. We're totally always on time, and we never go on side quests ever.
100%.
Not everything. I never just run everything right up until the live show. So we also have a 5 from Ill Magic again. Thank you, Ill Magic. He said, should Universal create a Jurassic ride from Rebirth where you're in the red and gray truck getting chased by the T-Rex and other dinosaurs? If that's anything like the ride that I think it's in Japan that they have, that thing's awesome.
Beijing, but that ride
okay.
is dope. And I think you even go backwards at one point, don't you? Like you back up and you go forward. It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you have a T-Rex actually chasing you in that ride. Like, give me that all day long. That would be. Now, it's also interesting too. They're doing that whole refurb of River Adventure. I've kind of wondered if they end up changing that over to Jurassic World. I don't know if they have enough time, but
I love Steven Spielberg. He's given us some of the best movies of all time. He's the GOAT. Okay. At the same time, though, he does have a tendency to stonewall the parks.
He can, yeah.
He's stonewalling. I'm telling you, he may have not said it directly, but I can almost guarantee you, he's stonewalling any changes at Jurassic Park because that's his baby. And the Jurassic Park land at Islands of Adventure, that was the first Jurassic Park land in the entire world. And is there any particular reason that it hasn't been the first to improve yet? When we've already had, now we're on the third iteration of the franchise, right? So I think this is very much Steven Spielberg being involved and not allowing Universal Studios to do something interesting to refresh the land in a meaningful way without just doing something derivative like making it the Jurassic World water ride at Universal Hollywood, or bringing in I would love for them to do something with, the big dinosaur animatronics that they have in Beijing where, they simulate them chasing you. But again, Steven Spielberg, I think he has a hand in this, and we probably won't see any meaningful change in Jurassic Park at Islands of Adventure until he gives it his okay on his deathbed.
Well, here's the thing, Jose. I think you're really onto something with that. Actually, I never considered that, but that could also be why out here in Universal Hollywood, they recently rethemed our Jurassic Park ride to Jurassic World. Maybe he has less, and I don't know the legalities of it all, but maybe when it's Jurassic World, because I don't believe he was part of that new reboot. Maybe they're Universal
maybe or something like that.
Yeah, but maybe he doesn't have as much pull and much say, so Universal has a little more creative freedom in their parks if it's a Jurassic World as opposed to a Jurassic Park thing.
To Philosopher's point, Universal really leaned into Steven Spielberg when developing like Islands of Adventure. Yeah. And from my understanding, it's a very lucrative deal. I mean, I've heard as much as like 10% of everything goes to Steven Spielberg's pocket. And that gives him a lot of pull to to Philosopher's point, gives him a lot of pull, right? And here's the thing. I mean, he was unbelievably upset when E.T. went away. And as Cliff Flicks is bringing out, right, in Hollywood anyway, and as Cliff Flicks is bringing out, he may have had a hand in securing E.T.'s future. Remember, it was going to be changed into Super Nintendo World initially.
I did hear that as well. Yeah.
Right. And obviously, Epic's on the way, so sure, okay, let's go ahead and transplant that. But that was one of the things that was on the chopping block. I wouldn't surprise me if he had a hand in that as well. I will say this. Okay, if he's stonewalling the parks, to Philosopher's point, can we at least stonewall it in the direction of Jurassic Park River Adventure, Islands of Adventure being heavily rehabbed? I mean, come on. There's some stuff in there that's like, ooh, that's rough.
Rough in there. And it's had some hurricane damage. I think Ian knocked a part of the side of the building off, and they've had to kind of patchworked it. So it's in a little rough shape. I think if anything, they'll redo the animatronics in there. It'll be a better ride, but it's just interesting because Jurassic World is based on a theme park based on dinosaurs that you would think that's tailor-made to put it into your parks and just lean into it. But I mean, I can't say they're great movies, but
I do want to add this, which is it's Universal related but off topic from Jurassic Park. Vash and I were at Universal, I believe it was early December with Theme Park Wizard. Had a great time. It was at AP Takeover night, I believe, right? And Vash, you and I and Wizard, we were standing there watching them construct the Fast and Furious attraction. And I'm telling you, even Vash, I remember you turned into me and Wizard saying, dude, this is crazy in person. This ride, I'm not even a coaster guy. I will probably never go on this thing, but it is like a wonder of the world. It is so cool, like in real life. Like the pictures, the video, nothing does its justice. It looks incredible.
Awesome.
It looks awesome.
It's extraordinary. I mean, in person, that thing looks wild. It looks super, super cool. So look, obviously, there was some talk out there, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, all these different franchises that could make their way to Florida utilizing this ride system, right? Well, we're getting a rehash of Fast and Furious. Fine, whatever. I'll just be honest. Franchise or no, this thing's going to be killer. This thing's going to be awesome when it opens in Hollywood or when it opens in Florida. People are going to ride it. And, like OG said before, attractions, they book vacations. So there you go.
Well, and like if you're going to put, I feel like they probably are just like, we're going to use Fast and Furious. It's a franchise we own. The fan base here doesn't like it as much, but it doesn't have as much of an impact on a coaster. So it's like the coaster's the attraction part you have, and it's even like an homage to the stuntman. So it's not even like you're riding around with Vin and he's been like,
right.
you know, it's stuff like that. So and to that point, I'm gonna get to Cliff as well. We have a 10 from Remy D. Thank you, Remy D. And it's on the topic here. It says IOA has been, or excuse me, IOA has seen its attendance decline 3 straight years since 2022. Average decline of 7%. Will it get cannibalized further by Epic in 2025 or see an attendance boost due to forced packages?
That's a good question.
Well, they've said, I'm curious. Well, what I'll be very curious about is these 2025 numbers coming out whenever we get them later this year. Because Universal has said in their earnings calls that they didn't see as much cannibalization as they anticipated. Now, I don't know what they anticipated and what those numbers actually are, but I think this is why you're seeing them go back into the existing parks, because now you have Epic and they're still adding stuff there, but you got to bring up these other parks. And IOAs, I mean, from everything I've heard, that's going to be Pokemon and Lost Continent, which I think if that's the case, IOA is about to go crazy because Pokemon is freaking massive. Like, I'm not into Pokemon, but my goodness, I didn't realize how big it was. And that's gonna, yeah, I mean, that thing will bring in people like crazy. So
and that's the thing, people are sleeping on some of these franchises, because I slept on One Piece. I was like, oh yeah, it's big, I've heard of it, and I'm like, yeah, it's popular. But when I went to FanFest a year ago at Universal Hollywood, I'm telling you, I mean, everybody was rocking the gear. Everybody.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Look, I mean, this is the one thing that Universal has done really successfully is the brands that they decided to partner with are very culturally relevant. And I will say, you know, getting immersed in anime is just something that Disney doesn't really have an answer to, at least when you look at those demographics, right? That is one corner of the market that, you know, is just fertile ground there. And I think Universal knows that.
Well, also, I've made the argument too. I don't think Disney has any answer for Nintendo either. They're going to try Fortnite, but I think Nintendo is much more of a like lifestyle brand. It's been around for you know, the 80s. Fortnite, like, they're going to do whatever they're going to do with it. And I have questions about how that's even going to work. But Fortnite's a way different game. I mean, I play Fortnite periodically with like my daughter. I don't really know how that's going to work in a theme park land, considering that the whole purpose of that game is it ever changes, and it's just like an IP hub where you buy different skins. It's just, I don't really, unless they go out and buy a studio or make a deal, which they're probably not going to want to do. They don't like those third-party licensing deals. I don't know if they have an answer for Nintendo either.
Well, Jared, you don't think when they acquired Chexnote's Impossible Creatures, you don't think that's going to be something that really?
I mean, I guess we'll see. If it does, Bob Iger's taking a victory lap for a decade about that one.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, that was me. I did that one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, maybe only my California people will get my next joke, but like, Disney really can't do anime, because they'd have to put a trench coat on almost all the female characters.
Pretty good right there. Pretty good. Very sneaky.
They just wear cloaks everywhere they go. Yeah.
You know,
just drawn that way.
Yep. We also have a 5 from Cliff again. Thank you, Cliff, for your generosity this evening. He said, I would get massive respect for Daddy Josh. By the way, OG, they did use your term in, I think it was Polygon. They used the term
Polygon.
I love it.
They used Daddy Josh.
I was like, listen, OG's going to be happy about this one. If he made sure that Brer Bear and Brer Fox somewhere in Villain's Land, even a small display. That would be kind of funny, actually.
Yeah.
Although I don't think the fan base would be happy if they were villains, but either way.
Well, that's interesting too, that whole thing, because we've talked about a lot on this show, Theme Parkin', right? And I've talked about it on DVD5, where it's like, you know, we don't know tomorrow's politics.
I think there's a strong suit about him.
I mean, is he willing to dabble with that and bring a little bit of that? I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get Splash Mountain back. That's not going to happen. But like, is he willing to kind of like bring out these characters maybe for after hours events or something like that? I mean, that's, who knows, right?
So this is very interesting, and I don't think I've gone public with this, actually. Well, maybe once or twice, but Disney had a PAC, you know, political action committee, and he was, at least last year, the biggest donator to it. Didn't actually say what side he was donating to, but he was the biggest donor by far. And now that information's not readily available anymore. But he is, I would assume he's politically active. I just don't know on what side. Maybe it's for tax purposes. Could be, but just interesting.
I mean, I'm sure everybody does. I think it's interesting. We just, at least publicly, it may change in the future. At this point, we don't know. But at the same time, I mean, how many people know about leaders of different divisions in their politics? It may not be that common either, but that may be something that comes out. We also have another 10 from Ill Magic. Thank you, Ill Magic, for your generosity this evening. Says, I know you guys may disagree, but I always felt like Hulk roller coaster should have been remade into Iron Man. The style of it gives me more of an Iron Man launch and flying experience. Well, they might if they could. They don't have the rights to Iron Man. Oh, wait. Yeah, they do.
They do, but any modification has to be approved by Disney.
That's well, yeah. I was thinking the inverse there. Yeah, you're right. Because that's the issue you have. Like, I like Marvel Superhero Island because I grew up on those comics, but they would have to get the approval from Marvel, which is a Disney, and it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Remember the two franchises that they picked for attractions, right? Hulk, Spider-Man. Why? Because those were the most successful characters in terms of merchandise.
Oh yeah.
And remember, I mean, back in the 90s when all this stuff was being hashed out, Iron Man's like CD character at best.
Oh yeah, he was not a main tier character until the movie. I mean, that was what when I remember first seeing the Iron Man trailer, and I was like, Iron Man. And
Well, why do you think when you walk into Avengers Campus, this was a Bob Chapek era land? Why do you think when you walk into Avengers Campus, it's basically Spider-Man land?
Yeah.
Bob Chapek knew. He saw the data.
Well, Spider-Man's probably the most popular Marvel character ever. Like, he's still
by
like
far.
The comics, all that stuff. Like, he is the most popular character, which I'm sure still drives them nuts. They don't control him on the movie side, because that's why Sony will never give that up. They'll try 20 different versions of the Spider-Verse, and they might make deals with Disney for it, but they'll never give it up unless they absolutely had to. They got in a bad spot, but I don't see that in the future. But yeah, we'll see on that one. But anything else you guys want to add about Villains Land before we move on? I think we can go into the Michael Eisner interview.
No, I just want to say I am cautiously optimistic, right? I am. I do think that Josh, we've seen some moves here being made with Galaxy's Edge and things like that. We're hearing murmurs now they want to improve Villains Land. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit cynical about some of this stuff, because Josh is a very good talker, so let's see how he does, but it's promising. I just hope it's being done for the reasons that we're being told. That's all.
Yeah, not being spun into everything other than what's actually going on, basically.
Yes.
The last thing I'll say about Villains Land, and really more so Disney's approach to how they're utilizing IP in general, not just their legacy IP, but how they're utilizing it in general. And I kind of want to bring Universal into this fold. So Universal is in the process of doing something which is really critical right now, and it's going to be very critical for the company for the next 5 to 10 years. And that's that they're building a moat around their entertainment industry by using very relevant types of intellectual property. I mean, types. So, for example, anime is a type of animation, but it's one that's very relevant and it's global. And if they capitalize on it and the right ones, they can build a moat that's going to protect them and their attendance numbers and the revenue for the next quarter of a century. Nintendo is another IP that it's another partnership they've made. Again, this is another moat IP that Disney is not going to be able to compete with. And they're trying to with Fortnite, but again, Fortnite is as popular as it is globally. It is not Nintendo. Nintendo is a very recognizable brand. They have very recognizable legacy intellectual properties. You have Mario, you have Metroid, you have Zelda. But this is something that Universal is actively doing. And going back to the question about attendance numbers, IOA, the impact that IOA's attendance has had on the company is very short term, because they know that they're building this moat with these relevant intellectual properties, which are going to have a shelf life of a quarter of a century. And they also have the legacy IPs as well. The monsters, and all the other Universal legacy IPs you have out there, like Jurassic Park and Fast and the Furious. So they are building a very it is a very comprehensive business model that they're utilizing here between legacy IP and IPs that they're partnering with that they don't own. My question is, how is Disney going to respond to that? Because they do have the legacy IPs, Star Wars. You know, they've bought a lot under the under Iger's tenure. They have built a very strong foundation, but I think that we can all agree here that they haven't been utilized to the best of their abilities, specifically Star Wars and Avengers. So to see Josh correct this with no budget, right? Or let's say a very loose budget to strengthen that Disney moat to better compete with Universal Studios, who's being very aggressive right now. I think that's going to be the telltale sign of Josh's ability to lead the company moving forward and to stay on top. Because when you're on top, you don't have to move as much, right? You don't have to make the moves, right? Everybody has to respond to you. But that is not going to be the case here in 10 to 15 years time.
That's a great point. It's like politics, Jose, where it's like, if you're leading in the polls, you don't want to do a debate. You just want to maintain what you got. You don't want, it's the person that's trailing that wants to have the debate, that wants to make the moves and build up. I do want to, if it's okay, Jared, real quick, I just want to bring this up because I think this is an interesting point by Cliffix. I'm more worried about Josh's war with others in Burbank. I think he will be surrounded by wolves. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with this, but I will say this. I think Gorman and the board, I think they made moves to sort of mitigate this by promoting Dana the way they did, giving her the pay package they did. I do believe this was a move to sort of prevent stuff like that, where it's like they're giving her her and others a cushy sort of consolation prize to prevent that kind of thing. Now, I mean, here's the thing where it's like, you never know, right? I mean, you never know. She could still go for it. I don't know. But I do believe that was the motive going in with Gorman and them when they promoted her, when they gave her the deal that they gave her. But I could be wrong. And I don't know how she's going to behave when she's in there, but that's just my take on it.
Well, I think it also would be a horrific look for Disney if you can't get away from Bob Iger, or anybody that's a new CEO has something come up. I mean, it would be catastrophic for them if they can't succeed Bob Iger. And so I don't think Iger will come back because, I mean, if he did come back, it's like, you're back at square one. Who's the next CEO, Bob? You go through this whole thing again. So I'm not saying that that's wrong either, because again, you're talking corporate world, and I've been a part of one before. It's the reason I got out of it. It's just nothing but people trying to backstab to move up, and that is a real thing. But we also don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm curious about his savviness of that world. I don't know if he is good at that. Maybe, I mean, obviously you don't become CEO of Disney if you're not. So one would assume he is rather savvy at navigating those waters, but who knows?
Dana's, I'm telling you, look out for Dana.
I don't know anything much about her. She is one where I'm like, I don't know, like her being chief creative officer, like she's the wild card in this. Where I mean, Christy McCarthy did in Chapek.
Yeah. Well, but remember, Dana Walden's right behind her.
Yeah,
she was the one arranging, walks with Bob Iger and making sure that he was available for calls from like Susan Arnold back then, and making sure that he could be asked to be the next, to take the reins of CEO once again from Bob Chapek while he was actually still in office. So I'm just saying, like, Walden's a smooth cat. He's
It's
a smooth
probably
player
a lot
right
like Game of Thrones, I'm guessing. So if Josh comes in and claims the throne, maybe he's got to watch a little Game of Thrones maybe to get a little what to do here.
Well, and Vash, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so Dana came over from Fox with Peter Rice.
Yes.
And then Peter Rice got Vadered in the village by Chapek.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, she had a part of that. No,
she, a lot of people were against Chapek for doing that. Walden stood beside Chapek in that decision, mostly because Walden took the job that Peter Rice had. But shortly thereafter, wasn't that long after, where she's arranging meetings with Bob Iger, alongside Christine Blasons McCarthy. Actually, Dana Walden was, I'm sorry, not Dana Walden, Trish Yamato was actually part of the meetings with the board and with Bob Iger and so forth, saying, hey, look, listen, how do we get Bob Chapek out of here, that kind of thing. I'm just saying, like, Walden, when you're placing so much power in her hands, do a lot of damage to you. And that's the thing. yes, it placates her with this much power. But how does Yoshimaru feel about all that? And what if Yoshimaru requires that power in order to make his decisions? What happens then?
Yeah. No, it's a great point. It's a great point. It's not impossible for sure. Well, we're gonna have to see what all shakes out with that because I mean, even these things you think, even these business relationships that you think are really good, right? Like we're gonna get into some Michael Eisner today, I believe, right? If we have time, but like him and Katzenberg were cool. I mean, they were very successful until they weren't. Right? Until they weren't. And then Katzenberg leaves and starts DreamWorks with Spielberg and Geffen and the whole thing. So you just never know, to Vash's point. You never know.
Well, anytime you have money and power involved, loyalties go very quickly, unless you're just a very principled individual. And I would say, I don't know this, but I would say 99% of people in corporate world of these Fortune 50 companies, they probably would do a lot of things for money and power. So it's never out of the realm of possibility. I suppose a lot of it goes into if he's really successful, then there won't be any room to make moves. If you run it, Chapek got into the problem with he seemed to be it was so weird. Like the fans didn't like Chapek. Seemed like nobody inside the company liked Chapek. He was making everybody mad. It was set up a situation for that to happen. Then you had Iger that never actually left. So this one will be different, but you still have a lot of the same ingredients that potentially could be there. But I would never say never, undoubtedly. I mean, this stuff can always happen.
True success from a creative-driven company comes from its creativity, right? And well, who's in charge of that again?
But would you argue though? But is Disney more? I view them now as a theme park company that makes movies.
Oh, absolutely. No, there's no question. And I think the board giving Josh D'Amaro that CEO-ship is an affirmation of that, right? I know James Gorman, he said a lot of things, but I think that's, to Jared's point, that's exactly what it is. However, to theme park philosophy's point, actually, for in this instance, you can't live off of aging franchises alone. You have to be able to create new original stories going forward. And, well, I mean, Dana Walden's in charge of all that. In fact, Ben Fritz brought up in the Wall Street Journal that even the movie side of the business was a little bit nervous about Dana Walden being in charge of that whole thing because, well, she's never really done that before. So, really interesting stuff here.
That's a good point, Vash. A lot of people kind of everyone sees her as a studio person, and she is. She's studio, but she's TV. She's Hulu. She's not the movie side. That's Bergman.
Also, if they do get something that is an original hit, I wonder if there's going to be a battle for credit. Like you're going to see, behind the scenes of, Dana's going to have her campaign. Josh is going to have his about who gets this credit, because a lot of it is going to be about protecting your own hide in many ways.
Both ways, too. Who gets blamed when something goes wrong versus who gets the credit when something goes right. That's going to be very interesting as well. And again, this is how this kind of operates right here. So I'm just saying, Josh, watch out. Okay, you might want to keep it in your chest.
Well, another thing too that I think we have to keep an eye on too is it seems like Disney, the way Josh is talking. I mean, he's a theme park guy, but the way he's talking every interview, it's gaming. We talked a little bit about Fortnite in here earlier. The gaming stuff is going to be massive for Disney going forward. I can just hear it every interview. Josh mentions Fortnite. Every interview he mentions gaming.
Well, Bob Iger just figured out people play video games like 2 years ago.
That's true. He was surprised by that revelation.
By the way, there's a lot of these people are playing these things called video games. You're like, Bob, it's been that way since like the 80s, brother. But okay. Well, and like you look at the I had a point in my brain. I thought of you said Fortnite, and then I thought about Bob Iger and video games. What was that point I was going to make? I can't remember now. It'll come to me later. But that's wait. Okay, that's the thing. If he goes heavy on video games and it doesn't work, that's going to be interesting. And also, it always just blows my mind when they bought LucasArts. Lucasfilm, LucasArts was a good gaming studio that they shut down immediately. They had a game they could have relied on. So now they got to sit there and be like, wait a minute, didn't we already have one of these? Oh, that would have served them great right now.
Yeah, no, it would have
shut down LucasArts. What? Yeah, that's the first thing that they did. You gotta be kidding me.
They had some banger games back in the day. Like there were some really good games that came out of LucasArts.
The best games.
I remember that, and they shut down the extended universe too. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? This makes no sense. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Disney buys a gaming studio at some point if the Fortnite stuff doesn't work out, because they're gonna continue to try to go down there and get on that.
They were considering Epic, and they were also not Epic, EA,
Yeah.
right? And they were also considering that CEO to run the company.
I remember that. I remember those rumors.
We dodged a bullet with that one.
Mr. Michael.
Right, but the fact that they were looking at that, to Jared and OG's point, emphasis on gaming.
Right.
Yep.
It's a good
100%.
point. It's a very good point. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Michael Eisner a little bit here. He had an interview with Graham Benzinger, and we talked about this on OG's channel the other day. I did a video on it, but it's got some interesting insights here on some things here. This whole interview is like an hour and a half long, something like that. We're just going to go watch a couple of clips. So this one here is Eisner talking about Bob Iger, Disney.
What do you think of the state of the company?
On Bob Iger, talking about Bob Iger and Disney's future here. So if you guys want me to stop at any time, just holler at me and we'll react to some of the stuff.
Sounds good.
What do you think of this?
I think the company's in great shape. I think Bob has been an excellent CEO. I'm happy that he was a person that I recommended, that I got it through the board. He was not the board's first choice in the beginning. He ended up being unanimous choice. He came out of ABC. He was a president under me for a decade. He understands the company.
It has to make you quite proud that you got that right, because, you know, oftentimes you have somebody who's successfully run a company for a really long time and the succession doesn't go as well.
Most of the time, succession doesn't go well.
Right.
Most of the time, you know, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So going to the outside is dangerous. If you have people on the inside that are capable, that's a better way to go.
Real quick, Jared.
Yeah.
This was an interesting comment from him because it was more ironic than interesting because he was from the outside.
Right.
You know, he came from Paramount and Frank Wells came from Warner Brothers and they crushed it. I will say they absolutely crushed it. But like, I don't know, man. I mean, I understand what he's saying. It can be risky when you go on the outside, but sometimes those outsiders understand the brand more than the lifers. If you remember, Bob Chapek was with the company for 30 plus years. Did he get the company? I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's not always the best thing to have the lifer in there, in my opinion.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I wondered if they went internally, because I think Gorman said they talked to like 200 people for the job.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of an appetite there was from people outside the company that really wanted the job. I've kind of always wondered that, if like maybe some of the turmoil and wanting to deal. I mean, if you think of like a high level CEO, they all have egos like crazy. Do you want to deal with Bob Iger's shadow and him having the history of not really going away? I feel like there's a lot of guys that or females or whoever that doesn't really want to mess with that very much. I think that played. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, it's a fantastic point, Jared. I do apologize. I didn't mean to step over.
No,
you, but I think you really are saying some compelling stuff here. Who wants to manage a legacy media company right now?
Right.
Especially when you know this industry is changing and it's changing bigly, right? And Michael Eisner, you know, he just says, well, there's going to be consolidation, parts, you know, things are going to switch hands. But I mean, this industry is really, really changing. And Disney right now, to your point, Jared, I mean, who wants to live under Bob Iger's shadow when you have to make pretty ruthless and pretty big decisions to ensure Disney's future success? Who wants to deal with that?
And that's before you even get into AI. How quick things move.
That's what I'm saying.
You do have to make decisive decisions. And that is a question I have about Josh is like, is he going to do that with Bob in the corner office and they're giving him a weird eye when he does something?
AI, massive consolidation, international players becoming a really big force right there, and competition for Hollywood. I mean, there's some big stuff facing this CEO. And it's like, who does want to deal with that? Who does want to, because you're going to be blamed if you get it wrong. Maybe you'll be hailed if you get it right. But, what are the chances of that? And to Michael Eisner's point, he said it in multiple interviews, maybe not in this one, but in past, that he was really worried about screwing it up because it was a big reality that could have taken place.
But I would also argue him admitting that means he's probably a good leader. Because I feel like people that are good
of
leaders
course
do question themselves. Like, am I? I think the worst thing you ever want is somebody who never questions themselves. They're just like, this is the right way. Like, that actually shows you're willing to listen, and you have those internal monologues with yourself. I think that is a good sign here. And I should be clear, Cliff Odds is up. This interview was done before Damaro was named CEO. So I think it was like beforehand or something like that.
Correct. Now, here's the thing. You're absolutely right on that. It's a huge red flag in the business world, like you were saying, or just in life in general. Anyone that can't admit any kind of personal responsibility or any fault in what they do, huge red flag. And I think that when Eisner comes out and he says, hey, you know what? I could have done this better. I messed up. I respect that. You know, I do. I really respect that. I even respect Daddy Josh when he was saying, hey, you know what? Smuggler's Run. People like it. They don't love it. I like that. You know, it takes leadership to acknowledge that kind of thing. The leaders, and I'm using that word loosely, they can't admit fault, or they think that, like, you know, they never do anything wrong. It's just that those are the ones that are never any good. You got to be able to admit, because how do you learn? How do you grow? If you're never able to acknowledge you messed up, you can never grow or get better.
Well, I've always had that argument. Well, first off, being married will teach you that. You'll learn you're wrong. But like, how, like, when you're talking about these positions like this, of like, when you're willing to admit to the mistakes, I think in this day and age, it actually endears you a bit to audiences to actually be like, you know what, maybe we didn't get this quite right, because no one's going to get everything perfect. It's a silly thing that I think a lot of, I don't know. That's the only thing that bugged me out at Disney. They never will admit a fault, even if it's like a small thing. Like, just admit a fault sometimes.
And there have been two big things surrounding this, and to your guys' point, one, I think there is definitely something called toxic positivity. We've seen that with a lot of game developers, right? Where they develop games. It's like, oh, it's going to be the next big thing. This is going to be great. Oh, I can't stop playing this. Comes out into bombs, right? Because you're not looking at yourself critically. You're kind of this group think, this bubble, right? And the other thing too is Disney has a unique culture with Disney Nice, and we have seen articles and we have seen some trade publications kind of point out the flaws in that. I think you do have to look at yourself critically. I think you do have to be maybe a little bit, maybe some would say vicious, right? And Michael Eisner, to his point, you know, he's a straight shooter. I'm sure he was in the courtroom. I'm sorry, in the boardroom as well.
Yeah. No doubt. I get the feeling Eisner was quite the bulldog back in his day, which I respect that.
And real quick, too, before you get started, he looked, and I don't mean to get superficial, but dude looks great.
He looks awesome for being in his 80s.
Absolutely.
I think he could take Bob Iger right now in an arm wrestling match.
Oh, easy.
I think he just turned that hat around and just over the top him like nobody's business. But
Bob, his predecessor died. He became
Frank Wells.
Right. He became the number 2 in the company after a mistake, which we've all made. And he was great. He did all the stuff that Frank did and more. And he understood it. And he spent a decade with me and our design people, the parks, and he knew it. It was so obvious. So I think he did a good job.
You think Chapek was given enough time?
That was a marriage made in hell. That was what Bob and Chapek. It just was a mistake, you know. Bob really wasn't ready to leave completely, and Chapek was going to prove that he was the boss.
But even right there, he says Bob wasn't ready to leave. Like, if Iger's not ready to leave, and I've always had this thing about whenever Iger left, that's never been brought up. Like, why did you leave when you left?
Oh, we know why.
What did you know,
OG, remember we were talking about this on your channel back in the day. We said something's not right here.
Oh, I remember that.
You're still making moves.
You guys remember that interview that he did? Like another one with Shape. That was the weirdest, most awkward energy interview. Like Iger kept side-eyeing him. Like it was I remember my wife came and told me, I was getting ready for bed, and she's like, "Did you see this?" I was watching. I was like, well, first off, something big's coming, because now Bob Iger's just randomly stepping away and all that big, COVID is starting to really ramp up. And then the energy of it, and you're just like, what in the world here? Like, to me, Eisner's not going to come out and throw Iger under the bus. He's just not going to do it. But I think there were some tidbits in here where he kind of like, I'm sure behind closed doors, he would probably have a lot of disagreements with what Iger did or maybe behaved in certain ways. But that's just me, though. I'm not saying that's what he said. I'm just kind of reading into it. But all right, let's go on with this.
Stupid things, not necessary things, separating the distribution from the creative of the movie business, all those things like that. Bob recognized it, couldn't help himself probably in noting it. JP was a mistake. I don't know if I hired him, but I certainly approved him to run home video. He did a great job.
Real quick, I'm so sorry, Jared. Real quick. I will say this though. I do feel a little bad for Chapek because he had to sign some like NDA, like he can't talk for a certain amount of time. But everyone's able to throw shots at him.
He can't say a word.
But he can't defend himself. And
well, he did get $20 million.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah, $25 million separation.
Yeah.
But that's why.
He's selling by the way. He's looking
It's
to
a
make
golden parachute. It's not a golden shield. You know, look, and it's very interesting too. This is the kind of side of Michael that I really appreciate right here. You can see him right there. It's like, I don't know if I heard him, but I definitely approved him, kind of thing. Like he's gonna, he's
Threading the needle,
flirting with it a little bit.
Like, I don't want that on me.
Exactly. Good job with the parks, but he just was the wrong choice. That's all.
I asked this from the lens of when you were hired to run Disney. Initially, they wanted you and Frank Wells to be kind of co-CEOs. The reports are that Disney's now considering a co-CEO post Bob Iger structure. Apparently, they've consulted Netflix because Netflix is a similar structure. But like, what's your view of that today?
Well, I don't know when you're going to air this, but it hasn't.
It's possible that a decision could have already been made when this airs. Yeah.
I just don't know when you're going to air this, but I want to make it a point that they haven't made a decision.
Right.
It is ridiculous. That is not to run the bakery. It doesn't work.
It is at Netflix, though, apparently.
Well, it's a completely different company. It's a technology company and an entertainment company. And it has been basically co-CEOs with Reed Hastings being the founder and the guru and Ted Sarandis. It's not applicable. And I still think it's a bad idea. I think it would be a really big mistake for Disney. Pick the person you think should be the CEO, and hopefully the second person will be number two. And when Frank Wells and I were having that conversation, first our shareholders wanted a senior share. I think they wanted Co, and then they wanted Frank, and then I said no, and then Frank said Michael should be the CEO. It should be run from a.
Do you guys agree with that about his? Yeah, that and he goes on to say too, like I said, I wouldn't do it unless I was CEO, but I don't know if I really meant that or not, which is kind of funny.
Well, I think he actually might have meant that because from what I understand, Roy even tells the story at the time. Remember, because he kind of led that effort to basically take Ron Miller out and install Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. But he originally goes to Frank. Frank's like, I don't really want to do it, but I will be number two to somebody. Let's make it Michael. And so Michael was definitely the guy. But Frank, what was amazing about him, and this is why the comparisons between Dana Wald and Josh D'Amaro, it's not even the same ballpark. Frank Wells was a supporter. He was a guy that was looking to support the CEO with those roles, and everybody describes him as the guy who he was like the glue that kept everybody together, kept the egos in check, kept people from the infighting and so forth. When I think Michael Eisner even tells a story about he kept a card on him that said humility is the greatest virtue or something like that. He was very much that guy, and so when that guy unfortunately passes away, that whole thing paradigm gets upended. Same thing with Roy and Walt, right? Roy is there to support Walt in whatever he wants to do. Not quite the same what we're getting today.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it was definitely different after Frank Wells passed away. I mean, the way everything ran was Eisner was most effective when Frank was there. And he brings up a good point. We talked about this. Jay brought up a good point too about this, what we were talking about on your channel, OG. And we've talked about before, like a dual CEO setup. I've said the entire time, if you're going to go that route, it has to almost be like a marriage. Like you got to trust that person. You can't worry about backstabbing. But really, I think, the more I've thought about it, and I've advocated for it before, but with sports background and even in business, at some point, somebody has to override somebody else. If you get to a point where you both disagree, if you don't have that, that creates a lot of potential problems. Because then that's what creates infighting. So it's like, even if you disagree with the person, you're just like, well, you're the guy, we're going with it, good or bad.
Well, look at even what happened with Disney themselves with Scarlett Johansson, for example, right? Well, the reason why the Scarlett Johansson thing happened was, in that case, Chapek felt it was Iger's responsibility, and Iger felt it was Chapek's responsibility, right? So even though in that instance nobody walked over the other or whatever, that still, no action resulted in a lawsuit, right? And Michael Eisner is exactly right here. The only reason why Netflix actually works is because one handles technology, one handles entertainment. Very different things in which you don't have a lot of overlap for those conflicts to emanate.
Well, even in Netflix, Sarandos is like the face. Reed Hastings, I actually forgot the other day who the other CEO was until I was like, oh, yeah, it's Reed Hastings. Like, Sarandos is the one, like, doing, he's doing the Warner Brothers stuff. So, not that a dual CEO setup can't work, but I think it has to be very specific circumstances to make that really work.
Well, and I think it also shows a lot of emotional intelligence. If somebody like Frank Wells, for example, who's, vying for #1 spot in the company, can self-reflect and say, you know what? Michael Eisner he'd better serve the company. And therefore he would be a better option to be the CEO. He's more, forward facing. Maybe he has something about him, his demeanor, whatever. And Frank Wells said, that's not me. He just self-assessment, was honest with himself and said, Mike, I think you're the guy to do it. And it takes some humility. Okay. Which is, it's not a common currency in the entertainment industry, especially when you're talking about at the executive level, because most of these guys suffer from like narcissistic personality disorder, which is how they're able to even get into these positions to begin with. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's like we're talking about it like it's a virtue, and it's because that it is a virtue in this industry to be able to have the self-reflection and emotional intelligence. Like, hey, look, it's going to behoove the company if I step aside and do #2, and I can do things in the background and I'll contribute as much as possible. But you are going to be the face. And, look, for Roy and Frank to do that, it's rare. It's very rare. And it's very rare. Absolutely. And even in Netflix's case, like you said, I don't know who the other CEOs are except for Tess Randaz, right? Yeah. But it just proves the point that whoever he's working with, they have his back, because to my knowledge, there is no indication that they're trying to vie for his position and vying for that spotlight. And it's so crucial that infighting does not exist, because it'll break a company so fast.
Oh yeah. Same thing with like sports teams. Like if you have a #2 that kind of operates as like your bodyguard as well, like they're going to make, like, if they're really loyal to you, if there's any sort of inkling of uprisings or whatever, they hear about it, they run that sort of firewall interference. I don't know anything about Dana Walden. I don't get the impression. She seems to me like she wants to be CEO. I think if it was up to Bob Iger, she probably would be CEO if I were to guess. Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's the thing about that, is like, if you have somebody that's got your back, kind of, again, not to do a Game of Thrones reference, like the hand of the king, that's the kind of thing there that like you really need in a company. And hopefully Josh has it. I guess we'll find out.
Well, I will say this. I do feel, because I was honestly kind of taken aback in a good way, with Josh's ability to navigate the CEO race. I was actually really surprised, because it was Dana's to lose. In the beginning, it was hers to lose.
I was just about to say that right there.
Right? He navigated that stuff really well, masterfully. She was putting out fires, and he was just stacking.
Yeah, and honestly, she didn't really put out those fires well, which I think kind of cost her. And when you look at who's contributing to the bottom line of the company, it's like there's really no argument.
Yeah,
stacking.
That's a really good point.
I wonder how much the Jimmy Kimmel thing messed with him.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Because she's all over it. She's all over it. Go ahead, philosopher.
Oh yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say earlier, and I was going through this in my mind. Like, if I were Dana Walden, I wanted to have an angle against Josh tomorrow. And this is a hypothetical, because we're not saying that she is trying to assert Josh and push him out of the company because there's no evidence of that. However, this is considering the nature of the game and the stakes, right? Like this is a possibility. They did just finish pushing out Bob Chapek a couple of years ago, right? And so this is a real thing that happens, but she does have an angle, and that angle is artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is there's going to have to be a villain when it comes to how many people they're going to have to fire when it comes to artificial intelligence taking over the industry, when it comes to accounting, producing, hiring cast, managing cast, all the ancillary things just around the creative process. And then once it starts replacing the creative process itself and then the actors themselves, you're impacting and you're disrupting an industry which relies on its people, and you're saying, hey, look, we're going to replace you with AI because margins. And so Dana does have an angle there. And depending on how Josh D'Amaro, which I don't think he's going to be very heavy-handed with the utilization of AI in terms of its implements and replacing and disrupting the industry as much as possible. I think this is going to be something they're going to tiptoe into just because of the amount of pushback that we've seen.
Oh, yeah.
But the shareholders are going to have whoever is heavy-handed in AI replacing. The shareholders are going to have that person's back because of the margins, because of the yield. That's what the shareholders want to see.
Right.
It's all the numbers, baby. But Hollywood is going to be pushing back against that. And Dana Walden, who is the viceroy of Hollywood, she's going to be pushing back against that. And she might make you think that she is for the AI initiative. I don't think she is. And I don't think she wants to be the fall guy for that either, because now that she's directly ahead of the studios and the creative process, can she make it look like Josh Walden is the bad guy in this? And then Hollywood, defers to any sort of disruption in the Hollywood industry as a Josh D'Amaro maneuver.
Well, that's the thing. That's where Josh's corporate maneuvering comes in. He's going to have to navigate that, because part of me is like, no, it'll fall on Dana because she's the chief creative officer and she's the president and she's dealing with the studio stuff. But I can easily see, if it's not handled the right way optically, I can easily see it landing on Josh D'Amaro's doorstep because he's the CEO. He's the big dog, so it can go either way.
And Hollywood is already a little bit like, Josh D'Amaro's not of us. It's what we heard over and over again from Bob Chapek, right? He's not one of us. So at least, Dana Walden comes from a creative background and has, at least tendrils in Hollywood, whereas Josh D'Amaro doesn't really, right? And I think philosophy brings out an astounding point here, because it's like, look, the board is going to come in and say, look, you had 5 flops in 2025. Okay, could we have mitigated any of those costs, any of those losses with the implementation of AI? And you're going to have to explain why, like the value of the human in those boardrooms. I don't know if Josh can get it done, but he might be the fall guy in this instance.
The caveat to that, I would just play devil's advocate, is the shrinking power of Hollywood. And I think AI is going to decimate Hollywood. The thing you also have too, it's not like Disney's the only studio that's going to be doing AI stuff. They're all going to have to accept it on some level. And look at the stuff that just went out about all the stuff you're seeing on AI that they were all getting mad about the Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise fight stuff.
Sea dance.
Dude, this stuff is not even that far away from being able to make whole movies here. In Hollywood, they may have bigger issues on their hands than just dealing with job loss due to AI. They're going to be dealing with industry loss in many ways due to AI.
But that's the thing, though. That's only more reason to push right into it, right? That's only more pressure applied. So it's like you're really going to have to stand behind creatives and say, hey, look, listen, there is this human element is worth preserving. Yeah, well, guess what? Snow White cost well over $300 million, and we lost $170 billion just on production budget alone. Like, you're gonna have to justify this stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very curious how he navigates that, because those are A, they're tricky waters, and B, there's no playbook for this because we've never seen this before.
Right,
you're gonna have to write this as you go about exactly what to do.
Well, and this is why I was a little hesitant about Josh getting the job in the first place, because with Hollywood you have AI, we're still messing with streaming. I mean, that whole thing is still evolving. Michael Eisner says in this very interview, he thinks in 20 years theatrical will be completely gone. It won't last. And we have Paramount and Netflix trying to buy Warner Brothers, and that's going to change the landscape no matter who gets it. So you have all this stuff going on the Hollywood side, but you have a guy he's not Hollywood, you know?
Although I get the impression Hollywood is shuffling the chairs on the Titanic. I really do. I just look at this point of like they're going to consolidate all these things, and it's going one way unless something changes as it currently stands.
Which makes physical experiences, especially physical transportative experiences, right? That Disney has so cornered the market on, that much more important. Because right now, maybe you can create a movie with AI, but can you build a theme park with AI? I mean,
right, exactly.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, again, one thing in his corner, but he will be invariably forced to navigate this. And as an entertainment company, if you're trying to pivot towards complete theme park company, you know, when you don't have the annual box office, I mean, look, entertainment still contributed. What was it? I think it was $11.41 billion to the revenue line.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do when that is impacting to the degree it might be?
You charge more in the parks. Guys, listen, Hollywood said you're going to be $300 to go to Magic Kingdom. We got no choice here. I'm halfway joking.
Exactly.
Actually do that.
Well, and it's tough. It's tough too because you have the flywheel, right? Where it's like the whole thing. I mean, the whole company is fueled by that studio side. Even though it doesn't make as much money as the parks and stuff, I mean, it's still fueled by that side of it. I mean, more now than ever. I mean, Disney does not make original attractions anymore. They only will do IP based stuff. The theme parks depend on that studio more than ever.
Yeah,
they got to get it right. They got to get that studio right. If you don't have new IPs coming in, you can't just make Frozen rides forever. I mean, you got to have, you know. So it's a tough call.
Yeah. Is it too late, OG? Is it too late? You know, I mean, Eisner goes into this interview, which I suppose we should get back to it right there. But Eisner does say that he shut down the animation department, right? You know, Roy's department, because it wasn't making, you know, quality movies anymore. It wasn't making quality entertainment anymore. And he didn't believe in, purchasing Pixar for the amount that Steve Jobs was originally asking for. Obviously, Bob Iger shifts that paradigm, but I mean, they have had such attrition at these creative levels. It's the reason why they have stumbled. And can you get it back on in this very tumultuous time?
Yep. It's good.
Crazy.
Question.
It's a wild time to be a fan. We are watching this stuff. I don't remember it being this crazy since like 2005 with the Roy Disney and Stan Gold stuff, because that was wild too. But this might even be more wild. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely more well, yeah, maybe recency bias, but I find it a little bit more interesting right now with all the different elements going on. But we'll finish up this clip now. I got one other one we'll take a look at.
Creative point of view, I'll be happy to be number 2. And it was great. And I can't believe I said it, because I don't know if I meant it. I said I wouldn't, because I didn't want to stay at Paramount. I said I won't come unless I'm the CEO. I probably would have folded on that. But anyway, I did say it. And they believed it.
All right, there's another clip. I will.
Wild, man.
Good stuff.
Yeah. The problem is that they didn't put the clips. I'll have to skim through this interview. You guys, if you guys want to chat a moment or say something in the chat, I'll find.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I was setting up for my show and I had to grab the right clip and then
I know
the right timestamp and stuff like that.
The good thing is they put chapters in here, which does help. I will say. So
good.
Thank you, Graham Disinger, for
well,
that.
Well, let me ask you guys this. While Jared's looking for that, we recently got news, and this is not Disney, but it's Disney adjacent because it will all this stuff kind of fits together, right?
Right.
We recently got news now that Paramount is back in the running after like 19 attempts. They're back, baby.
I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get it for the reasons we talked about before as the regulators. I think they'll end up with it.
You know, I did a show with the amazing Lou Wasserman's Ghost, who, if you don't know, worked in Hollywood for a long time, has quite the background. I can't reveal who he actually is, but quite the background. Okay, we would do Hollywood Backlit with Lou and you. Very, very interesting stuff. I'm telling you, man, I would bring up stuff where, looks like Netflix gonna do it. That guy was like, nah, it's gonna be Paramount. Just watch it. I'm like, really? He's like, all this is noise. Gonna happen. So maybe to Jared's point, could be.
The only thing I was going off of early on, one of the regulators said Warner Brothers has a better chance of getting that breakup fee than they do to get this deal approved. And then all of a sudden, the last little bit, there's an article by, I think it was Charles Gasparino, that said there's a ton of pressure now that both sides were getting this. So basically saying, like, this is not going to go through with Netflix. And so so if you're Warner Brothers, you do want to sell. And I get the impression that they've been told it'll go through more than likely with Paramount, but it's not going to go through this way. And then you had Sarandos get grilled on Capitol Hill as well. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, I see where this is going. Like, they're going to use a lot of different reasons, but I think this is now Paramount.
But let me ask you guys a question, and I'm not trying to get political, but it's part of the equation. If that is the case, Paramount gets it. Does Netflix have a legal case against that, saying, hey, Trump has skin in the game with this Ellison dude? We feel like we were shoved out because of their relationship. Is there a case to be made there?
They lost it fair and square, okay? The Ellisons, they put up a better offer. It's all about making deals, OG. Okay, it's all about making deals. I wrote the book on it. I don't know if you notice. Art of the Deal. It's great bestseller. Awesome stuff. Best book ever written. Listen, sore losers, okay? No. Well, look.
That's good, Vash.
But to OG's point, right? The administration has been very clear about this, maybe even too clear. That they would not approve a deal if Netflix was the winning bid on that. Now, I think from Trump's personal standpoint, he's actually kind of taken himself out of it just a little bit, because he's like, it's out of my hands. I'm not going to get involved in it, whatever, because it does look very bad. The more involved I think he is in it. Fact remains, though, do they have a lawsuit? I mean, they could. It's very, very possible. I don't know where that goes, though. And so it's kind of like, look, from the administration's point of view, all they can say is, well, Netflix wants to get rid of an industry with this merger. Do we approve this? Understanding that?
And Netflix's argument that they're not a monopoly because of YouTube, and they even said in that article that they're basically just being like, that's not an argument. And I think there's a difference between YouTube and, these streamers. And so if that argument doesn't go, your kind of whole thing there is just sort of where you're going to go with that. And more than likely, I would assume, he'll probably remove him, like Vash was saying, like, not going to be directly involved in this. You'd have a hard time proving that it went to a certain way. And Cliff Flicks brings up a really good point. It's not just the U.S. Europe hates the Netflix deal too. And that probably could be a little bit of pressure on that too, because they have not been happy about it either. But we will see on that. We got another super chat. We got a 5 here from Vigo1412. Thank you very much. This is enjoying the conversation. Thanks for the live stream, guys. Also, is theme park philosophy Pete Wentz doppelganger? LOL. Are you Pete Wentz?
Who's Pete Wentz? I don't know who that is. I'm gonna have to look him up now.
He's the drummer from Fallout Guys. I think he's a drummer. I know he's in Fallout Guys.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just going to say, I think you're a better looking gentleman than Pete Wentz.
I can see how I
like
see why
Jose.
he thinks I look like him.
Yeah. you can pass for him. Okay, I found the part here. This goes on talking about streaming, since that's kind of what we were talking about here a little bit. Let me share this and see if it will all work. There we go.
You mean like Paramount buying Warner Brothers, that kind of thing?
Sure.
You know what it is? It's a merry-go-round. If they buy Warner Brothers 3 years, they'll spin off this one and they'll buy that one. It's been a merry-go-round since 1948. When they broke up the Paramount decree, when they broke up Paramount Pictures with the Paramount Theaters, and then Paramount Theaters merged with ABC, and I mean, every company has gone through this. When we did a 100-year bond at Disney, there were only 3 companies in the world, or maybe in the U.S., that had been around for 100 years. So, yes, there'll be a lot of change. It'll still be who was the best ideas. The technology, however, I suspect the idea of home entertainment in some form is here forever.
When you became CEO of the Walt Disney Company, stock price was $1.24, and it was $23.80 when you left 21 years later. So you can make the strong argument that outside of Walt himself, no single person had a more consequential impact on the company than you. But how do you look back on those last couple of years, that last period now?
Well, there was change going on. I was stubborn. I did not want to buy Pixar for a price that I thought was crazy. It wasn't as depressing as the media made it. We were still doing very well. We were still a great company. I had decided that we couldn't lose any more money with Roy Disney making movies. So I stopped that. Probably a bad political decision, but the right decision.
Now, we talked about this on your channel, OG, but that statement right there, I always found is super interesting. It was the right decision, but politically, you're going up against a Disney, and he may have, I mean, toward the end there, I mean, he did get pushed out, but like, it was probably a losing battle, but he still thinks it was the right decision to make. I find that very interesting and very like open and candid about it.
No, and that's what makes a great leader. Honestly, he knew optically it wouldn't look good, but he did it anyway. He knew it was the right thing to do. So I respect that 100%. You know, now, I want to ask you guys, I do want to ask you guys something real quick too, before we go further. He does mention, I don't know if it's in this clip, but it's somewhere in this interview, he does mention he thinks theatrical is probably not going to last next 20 years. Is that a case that Netflix can make where it's like, in terms of killing an industry, where it's like, they can make the argument, well, theatrical's already kind of dying anyway, whether we get Warner or not? Or do you think that's sort of something that
would require the government to be forward thinking?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's also hypothetical. I mean, that's the problem with that statement is how do you? I mean, you and I know that, you know, everybody knows the studio is done, but how in a court of law do you demonstrate that?
Yeah, that's true.
AI robots. You bring them to
well, and that's something you bring up a really good point too. Is you know, the studio is afraid of Netflix, or people are afraid of Netflix killing the industry or speeding up its death. I'm sorry, Netflix isn't going to do it as well as AI is going to do it. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And the studios are going to do it to themselves. Why? Because they can't afford $300 million movies anymore. You know,
well, that's
gonna be a self-inflicted wound.
Now it is interesting. I don't know if you guys caught Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were on Joe Rogan's podcast a couple weeks ago, and they got to talk about AI. And Ben Affleck had a really good point, and I've kind of always said this about AI, is a lot of these things, and I'm not saying AI won't have a massive impact. It already is and will, but a lot of what they say AI is going to do stems from the AI companies themselves trying to basically live up to their evaluations of how much money I mean, you had OpenAI, I think they burnt through $12 billion in a quarter a couple quarters ago. And
very quick.
They're out here saying, oh yeah, it's going to do X, Y, and Z because they're still trying to get funding and trying to justify it. And he was saying how he thinks this was Ben Affleck. Actually, it was a really good point about how he thinks it depends on how you want to use it, but it'll never be able to write a full script, but it'll definitely aid things. I think there's a way in which it could completely decimate Hollywood, which on some level it will, but it also maybe brings down costs. And then who is able to work with it the best is able to survive. And I mean, I'm not saying who knows what's going to happen, but I think I've also said too, I'm kind of tired of Hollywood sort of just whining and moaning about this. Make better stuff, and then AI won't be the biggest threat there. If you're making stuff that's really, really good, there's not as much room for AI to come in. But at this point, a lot of people are like, well, let AI give it a shot, because you guys are just throwing, I mean, outside of a few movies here and there's not bangers coming out like you had in the 90s by any means.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. If you're a studio making movies on budget or under budget, and you're producing high quality content and your movies are winning awards, then as a studio, you wouldn't be fearing the onset of artificial intelligence replacing all of your talent.
Yep.
But if you're afraid of it, it's because you're not making movies on budget. It's because you're not making movies they're winning awards. You're not producing high quality content. So of course you're going to be afraid of somebody replacing your job. I mean, this is every instance of technology replacing humans in the cases where they're the least effective, least least productive. I mean, you name it, right? Like this is just another one of those instances where it's inevitable, and the only way to really change it is to Like, what was the 19th century railroad analogy that you use? John Henry, was
John
it?
Henry, yeah, be John Henry.
Be John Henry. You just got to beat the train. That's it.
Well, I mean, and I always bring up John Wick as a really good example. You don't have to have billion-dollar movies to make money. If your budgets are in line, I think the first John Wick was like 90 mil. It made 400. The marketing was mostly like a lot of viral stuff, but you don't have, like, with all these budgets, their break-even points are like $500 million. So if you can get these budgets down with AI and actually, get it to making movies. I mean, I always look in the 90s where you had, and it's not going to be the same thing, but you get, like, I love National Treasure. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. That's a very simple movie you could make today if you really wanted to. That wouldn't cost you $300 million to make. You probably could make it for 100. I mean, the Super Mario Brothers movie was what, 100 mil, I think, maybe 90, and that made over $1 billion. So I think the budgets are maybe where AI can't help them if they're willing to do it, but I don't know. It's going to depend on each studio, probably.
Well, and that's what I really wish. And if Josh Giamara wants to make moves with the fans, if he announced, you know what, we're gonna really pull back on these live action remakes. We're gonna bring back these kind of like these mid-tier movies, like the Mighty Ducks kind of style films, National Treasure, these kind of low to mid budget movies, but they're original. Like, bring that era back to the live action, instead of just remaking the old school Disney stuff. Like, come on, and I think right now is actually a perfect time to do that. Because like you were saying, Jared, like right now, I mean, these studios are really looking to pull back on the cost. Well, do those kind of films. I think there's an appetite for it. I think it would do very well.
You put Nick Cage in just about anything, I'll check it out at least once.
Yeah.
Face Off 2, I'm in. I'm in again. If they want to do another Face Off, I'm on board.
Nick Cage is the sole reason that Sean Connery agreed to do The Rock, because he said, I want to work with Nick Cage. But yeah, there you go. The Rock.
I know, but movies like The Rock. I mean, yeah, you're talking about like, if they could get back to that stuff.
Well, go back and look at movie budgets in the 1990s. I was actually watching a YouTube video the other day. It was all the Star Trek films and the ones that flopped. And if you go back and look at the budget, it's a really good video. I can send it to you guys in the DM if you want. But it actually enumerated and itemized what their budget was, what their box office was, and what the box office multiplier was. And for those of you who don't know, you wouldn't aim for at least a 2.5. Like 2.5 is a hit. Anything between 2 and 2.5 is considered okay, but underwhelming. And then anything under that is a flop. Okay. It's crazy how much budgets just ballooned in the early 2000s, because Star Trek 60 Undiscovered Country, for example, had a budget of like 20 or 30 million dollars. It went on to make over 140 million at the box office. Massive hit, right? And then when they went to the J.J. Abrams films, now you're talking about 150, 180 million dollar budgets. 10 years later, like a decade removed from a 30 or 40 million dollar budgeted film, and now it's ballooned 3-4 times as much.
Dude.
It's like and you're talking about the same franchise, by the way, right? Same premise, same characters, more or less. Space searching, blah blah blah, right? But anyways, long story short, all the movies, the Star Trek movies that they made, all the way from the first one, which was like 1977, came out the same year as Star Wars. I think, or like a year later. All the way up until the J.J. Abrams, I think they only had like 3 flops, right? 2 or 3 flops. All those Star Trek movies, they had like the same amount of flops as Star Wars movies. There was significantly less Star Wars movies, right? And they spent significantly less getting there too. So whatever Hollywood needs to do, they need to get back to that point. They have lost sight of how to make movies, like, by so much. They don't even know how to get back there. It's crazy. Yeah. But hopefully AI has a way to carve that path. I'm sorry, Vash, go ahead.
Oh no. I thought you were done. I really didn't want to step over you, because I think you make a great point here, because with ballooning budgets comes more risk aversion as well. Mm-hmm. And no studio wants to lose big money, right? So they might not be so willing to approve these projects and so forth, or maybe approve them with built-in audiences, and then hand those franchises off to people who may not be in tune with the franchise. And that's why that Jeffrey Katzenberg 1991 memo was so interesting because he likens the movie ticket to a price of bread and so forth, and how it's okay to take risks. Obviously they have to be measured, of course, but he talks about the different tiers of films that are worth making, the fact that it's good to take risks, and just all these fundamental philosophies that Hollywood has just forgotten. And yet, that was one of the most successful times in Disney's history, by sticking with those very rich principles right there. Just fascinating stuff.
Well said.
Oh, sorry, I froze up there for a minute. No, I completely agree. And I will say, John MK iTrain says, the AI stuff is so bad, it looks so fake to me, and you can easily tell it's fake right now. But how quickly these things are getting better. I mean, give AI another 6 months, and where's this going to be? It's insane how quickly it's going.
Well, that new program, what's it? What's it called?
C-Dance.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't look fake at all, though. That thing
Even
is crazy.
there's another one out there. I think it starts with an H. I can't remember the name on top of my head, but those two are making like insane in terms of the AI models they're using. But
it's interesting. Like Jurassic Park, right? Everybody loves the original Jurassic Park. Oh, so good, so monumental. The effects were so good. One of the reasons why that is looked at so fondly is because they effortlessly, or at least it seemed like at the time, they effortlessly blended different technologies together. And there's going to be a point here where we do get some AI into some of these pictures. You are not going to be able to tell because they're going to use an assortment of different tools in the tool chest to make it look like, to make it look seamless, like the original Jurassic Park.
Yep.
And let's not forget, you can use an AI like C-Dance to do 80% of the heavy lifting and then polish the other 20% in post-production at a fraction of the cost. And so, while it looks fake at the first iteration of that first product after you've entered the prompt, there's still post-production involved in Hollywood, right? And so you can refine it, make it look real, make it look good. And now you've done it for 10% the cost, 10% to the dollar.
And Kiki Luca's point, Knights of the Seven Kingdoms has a much lesser budget than House of the Dragon, but it's better because of the story. And that's the thing too. I think story is much bigger than just the CGI and all those aspects of it that maybe they're figuring out. But all right, we'll get back to this real quick.
I tried and succeeded in getting rid of Harvey Weinstein,
which was unpopular with the board at that time.
No, they weren't wild about Harvey, and he was losing money. No, that wasn't the only thing unpopular. Well, Harvey and Steve and Roy become adversaries to the CEO. Well, one had the name of Disney. I didn't. One was Steve Jobs, an American, one of a kind. And the other was a despicable man who was loved by the media for a long time because of the movies he made. And I made the judgment call, probably right, but not politically smart, that I was not going to put up with it. So that was unpleasant. But I was ready. I'm 21 years at Disney, having every weekend 20 scripts by my bed that I hadn't read, and thousands of emails, and international, building a park in Shanghai, and having just built a park in Hong Kong, and doing the Animal Kingdom, doing a second park in Paris. I was ready to move here, I was ready to move to the one street in Los Angeles that felt like New York. I was ready to not have 20 unread scripts. I was ready to actually own myself content. I don't want to go through it, but we were the first ones to start short form with a company called Vugaru. When the bandwidth expanded, then it went into longer form like BoJack Horseman, bought a soccer team that I owned. My kids were now adults, and I certainly didn't leave to spend more time with my family because I already spent all my time with my family. So that's all what people say.
Regardless how talented
So we'll probably, I mean, there's a lot in this interview. OG and I, we went over this the other day too. I mean, you can spend probably 4 hours going through all this stuff. He has another point where he talks about how he doesn't like the prices in the parks. But he also says that Bob Iger navigated it probably better than he could, things like that. But it's a fascinating interview. And we're already up over the 2-hour mark here. So I figure we'll start landing the plane here a little bit. So us East Coasters, it's getting close to our bedtime. But I love this interview. I've always loved Eisner. He wasn't perfect, but he saved Disney back when he came in, undoubtedly. Toward the end there, he even talks about you're going to get Steve Jobs, Harvey Weinstein, and Roy Disney. He's losing that battle. But I get the impression as well, and I think we mentioned on yours as well, OG, where it's like he probably had a lot of those battles where he's just like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the time that he lost. Like it was just then it even goes on to say, creatives, you have a time where you're effective, and then it's time for you to move on.
Right.
And I think it's refreshing to hear his humility, his honesty about all this stuff, and then just really just being candid about like mistakes that he made. Like even the part where he says like it was the right decision, but politically it was the wrong one. Like I don't feel like, well, I'll put it this way. I don't feel like we'll hear Bob Iger say these words in 10, 20 years. I just don't get that impression that we're going to have the same sort of like self-reflection and admitting faults as much as Iger, in my opinion, has been in legacy mode for probably the last 2 years, if not more.
It takes a leader. It takes someone. And look, I do think Bob Iger has done a lot of good stuff. I do think I do think the acquisitions were necessary. I do believe a lot of what he did was good. But the issue with Bob Iger is exactly what you just laid out, Jared. He is unwilling to self-reflect. It's this narcissistic sort of thing where it's like, he'll take credit for all the good, but anything that's like a critique or anything, it's someone else's fault. It was Chapek. It was this one, that one. That's not, I like the fact that Eisner's able to say, hey, you know what? That was on me. I could have handled it better. I like that, Now, I get it. I think someone in the chat said this was after the fact. And that's true. I mean, it's easy to come in, years later and say this. But to your point, Jared, I don't think even in 10 years, Bob Iger's going to say this kind of stuff. I really don't.
I don't either. I don't. Well, and like I've been pretty critical of Iger, but you can make an argument the acquisitions were needed because they had almost been a hostile takeover a few times. So you make your company big enough where it kind of defends against that. I have a lot of issues about some of how that stuff was managed after the fact, but you can make an argument some of the stuff was needed, but kind of like Eisner had his time. You can say Iger had his time. I think it's been time for Iger to go for a bit. And we'll see about Josh. Like I said, I don't know enough about him. I think he has a shot. I think he has potential. But I'm not going to make a prediction because I just don't know. But he could have a shot here. I mean, he has the chops in terms of the public image end of things and things like that. But I guess we'll find out. I mean, he takes over on March 18th, so that's not that far away to once we start seeing what he does and what he doesn't do. Really,
month from today.
Oh, it is a month from today. Yep, you're right.
Oh wow,
yeah,
didn't even realize that. Oh man,
it's crazy.
OG's marking his calendar over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just like checking them off. It's like.
By the way, I'm not going to be surprised if Iger kind of leaves the stage earlier than expected too. He's kind of already hinted that a little bit too.
I wonder if he's already kind of like we've talked about it, Jared. Right? We speculated like recently with the Kennedy leaving and the Galaxy's Edge stuff. Was he kind of shadow running it for like a little while even? Is he running it now? Maybe we don't really, I don't know. There's something going on.
It does. It felt like that Wall Street Journal article was a DiMauro, his PR team because it was he's the one that brought Bruce Vaughn back. They really went after Chapek. They didn't go after Iger, but they also did those statements about how they lost faith in Imagineering. That was under Iger. So I mean, that's kind of somewhat putting some shade on Iger there. And it presented Josh in a very positive way about he was going to come in and rehab Imagineering. Him and Bruce Vaughn are hand in hand and all this stuff. It's interesting.
The one guy that we don't hear a lot about is Hugh Johnston.
That's
I
true.
do kind of wonder, what he's doing behind the scenes because I don't really hear about him. He just got somebody under him and got a nice big fat paycheck. I do kind of wonder. Like how much of his involvement we've seen and we just maybe unnecessarily haven't noticed or connected to him personally. But I think Michael Eisner. I think it's I think Jared, you make a good point. You gotta know when to leave, and I do agree in his sentiment that 21 years like I'm good kind of thing. When Steve Jobs, right, and look, you gotta give Bob Iger credit for this. The best decision, one of the best decisions he ever made, was purchasing Pixar. And OJ, right,
100%.
right. They needed that creativity. They needed that creative engine. And Bob Iger, when he's looking at the relevance of the franchises that were Disney versus the franchises that were Pixar, like Hong Kong Disneyland, for example, it's like, okay, it's clear, right? We got to incorporate these guys. Michael Eisner not understanding that, right? Understanding the importance, the significance, and what that meant. It's one of those things where he's looking at movies, he's looking at dollars, he's looking at cents. He's not really looking at creative. Big minus right there. And also, too, he had a chance to purchase Marvel back in the day and didn't actually do it. It wasn't until Bob Iger came around where they actually finally did purchase them. Again, those acquisitions, very, very good. Obviously, some of those go off the rails, as we all know. But for a while there, good stuff.
Yeah. Real quick, Jared, before we go, I just want to answer something from Cliffix. He was asking who gets the shower office. I will say, I will say this, Cliffix. I did a Walt Disney Studios tour not too long ago, and the exfoliating stone had Bob's name on it. So I think we all know.
I think we could
really
just have a good old shower fight between Josh and Bob. Who gets?
Remember, Bob Iger never let go of that corner office when Treat was still in
shower. Okay,
2 times a day.
2 times.
I mean, I get it if you're in Florida. I get it if you're like, when I'm in Florida, I need 3 showers. I get that. When you walk out of the house in the summer, you're already need one. But
well, to be fair to Bob, it's probably better than never showering, right? I guess.
Fair point.
No comment. Hey, Clifflix, what's coming with another question? Right
Jared, big City Walk edition coming. Did you add an AI cowboy hat to your thumbnail? Maybe. I may or may not have added it. If you're asking, listen, I'll tell you this: I don't have a cowboy hat, so I may have put a cowboy hat on my thumbnail because it's. Did you see that with Luke Combs Restaurants coming to City Walk?
Yeah.
And I know nothing about any. I was like my video is me learning about it as I make the video. And I'm just like, I didn't know this thing even existed.
It's a very interesting partnership.
It's a country Western thing, isn't it? Or something?
Yeah. It's like a big, I guess they started in Nashville. It's like it's going to be a 3-story bar grill. Like I think they're going to put it right where all those kiosks are. So it's going to look over the waterway there, but it'll be a good addition to City Walk. Cause City Walk, I don't think has the best places to eat, personally speaking. I think they're kind of
I mean, outside of University of Hollywood, there was like a country bar out there, country bar and restaurant for decades.
Yeah.
It was right outside the gates. It was crazy. So
Saddle Ranch with the bull.
Right?
Yeah.
Saddle Ranch.
Listen, all I know is you're going to see a lot of Florida men at that bar, a lot of Crocs. And I'm from Missouri, so I fit in with the Florida man well. They're like a cousin to the redneck. So I feel very at home around the Florida man. He doesn't worry me. If your car breaks down, he'll be able to fix it, whether he's got tools or not. He'll figure it out.
All I'm saying is they better serve bread rolls as soon as you sit down. And then they better know how to cook a medium well sirloin or medium rare sirloin.
At the very least.
That's it. All you have to do is nail those 2 things. Maybe have some decent mashed potatoes, well-seasoned fries. I mean, you've got 80% of what most men are asking for when they go to a steakhouse.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Now, it would be interesting. They do have in the Nashville one, they have like concerts in there. I don't know if they'll do that in Orlando, but that would be interesting if they had like a concert venue in there.
I would think they would.
I would assume. All I know is after Halloween Horror Nights, that place is going to be hopping. I'll tell you that much.
Tennessee, big market, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
That's very true. That is very true. Yeah, I think this is the 3rd location. They did Nashville, Vegas is getting ready to open, and then Orlando is opening sometime late in 2027. So we'll see what that was. But I did don a cowboy hat for that thumbnail. I figured it was appropriate there. But no, this has been a great live stream. You guys, listen, I could go on these for 4 hours because I look up and it's almost midnight. And I'm like, I thought it was 10 o'clock. But before we go, I just want to say thank you to the chat, you guys. I couldn't even keep up with the chat, so I appreciate. Thank you for everybody seeing the super chats. Greatly appreciated. And the great conversation with you gentlemen. Before we go, I wanted you guys to be able to plug your wares. Where can I find you? So Orange Grove 55. Thank you for being here as always. And where can everybody find you?
Yeah, you can find me right here on YouTube, talking shop with these fine gentlemen all the time. Theme park studio corporate earnings, whatever it may be. You can find me right here on YouTube, Orange Grove 55, also on X, Orange Grove 55, and on Instagram, Orange Grove 55.
Yes, sir. And by the way, Cliff gives us gold medals. So
there we go.
We are now Olympians, I believe. Theme Park Philosophy. Jose, thank you for being here as always. And where can everybody find you? And also go check out his latest video that he has up.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. Pleasure having this discussion with you guys. Really enjoyed it. The real MVPs are the people in the chat that have been here for the whole 2.5 hours. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening. We do because of you guys, right? We don't just talk to ourselves for our health. We enjoy the family. Okay, so keep on coming, and we'll keep making these videos. You can find me on Theme Park Philosophy. I actually just dropped a new video right now. You can go check that out right after this one. And thanks again for having me on.
Of course. I just realized I need to get a Vin Diesel family little sound thing on here. I could use it from time to time. And first time on the channel here, I greatly appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Bash Guy, thank you for being here. Your insights were fantastic. Appreciate it very much. So where can I find you on your new channel? And I said you're working on a video there. I'm very curious about this history of Josh Tomorrow, I will say.
Yes, it is. I'm working on a video. It's going to be pretty large in scope, going over his almost entire career. But mainly focused on maybe his origins and where he has wound up for sure and how he got there and what we can glean from all of that for what decisions might be made for the parks we love and also to the Walt Disney Company. Very, very interesting. After that, it comes Dana Walden and what he might want to look out for. Very interesting stuff. We got a couple of videos on the plate right there. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. But we just celebrated our first live stream over there at Bash Guy Parkcast, so please go ahead and go over there and give it a subscribe. Maybe watch that stream right there because I thought it was pretty darn good over there with OG and some of other friends over there. Very, very cool stuff. But I want to go ahead and say thank you, Jared, for having me on. This has been a lot of fun right here. You've been an inspiration to me for sure. And thank you so much for everybody for supporting Vash Sky Parkcast. Do appreciate that.
I need intro music. I need something. Now I need something. I'm gonna have to use AI for that.
And Vash, just promise us one thing: when you drop your Dana Walden video, we have to get a pantsuit on that thumbnail, bro.
I will try to incorporate that in. Might just see the big shoulder pads.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta get those really wide shoulders in it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and before we go, Cliff Flick said, I'm talking about MegaCon. Message me on Instagram. I might be there. It depends on a couple of things. My daughter is deep in dance season, so I'm maneuvering. All my weekends now revolve around when is that happening. So, but hit me up. I might be able to go. Me and my wife are talking about going way there. But yeah, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you again to everyone that sent super chats. I lost track of all of them. I know Cliff Flicks, Vigo 1412, Ill Music. Is that right? OG.
Ill Magic.
And I'm missing some. If I miss you, I apologize. You greatly appreciate it. And we will see you guys on the next one. Everyone take it easy and have a great evening. See you guys.
Peace.